Chapter 327. The heavenly steel platform was located in the central region of the Azure continent. But even so, there was no one there at all. There was only an old man sweeping the steps of the heavenly steel steps. Such a wondrous place had never been occupied by anyone, and no one had ever dared to wipe it off the face of the Azure continent. This was because it was rumored that the owner of the heavenly steel platform was an extremely powerful individual. Not only that, the heavenly steel in the heavenly steel viewing hall was a supreme treasure. It was able to peer into the innate talent and destiny of those who cultivated the heavenly steel viewing hall. It was extremely beneficial to those who cultivated the heavenly steel viewing hall. Every time the heavenly steel viewing hall descended, countless people would head there to challenge the heavenly steel steps. Not only that, there were no rules to the descent of the heavenly steel platform. It was rumored that it depended on the mood of the owner. But now, an elder from the unmatched realm said that 3 days later, he would borrow the heavenly steel for them to challenge, to pave the way for them. The old man naturally knew that among the many geniuses of the unmatched realm, there would be many who would head to the Ginku continent at the end of the year. The mysterious old man actually had a friendly relationship with the mysterious and powerful heavenly steel platform's owner, allowing him to borrow the heavenly steel steps for the sake of the cultivators of the unmatched realm. At the same time, it was also for the sake of the battle between Qin Wendian and Sidupo. The loser would be expelled from the unmatched realm. This was a battle that neither of them could afford to lose. If Sidupo were to lose, where would his face go? He was 2 levels higher than Qin Wendian, yet he failed to kill Qin Wendian today. On the contrary, Lin Haoyan and the rest who participated in the hunt for Qin Wendian had all died. This was already a huge loss of face for him. If Qin Wendian was defeated, he would die. Situpa would never spare him. Senior, he killed someone in the unmatched realm. Yu Bingying spoke, wanting to pursue the matter of Qin Wendian. Do you think I'm blind? That ethereal voice drifted over once more, containing a hint of coldness within. Yu Bingying's countenance stiffened. So what if she was a princess of the Azure Emperor Palace? In the unmatched realm, the old man didn't need to give her any face. Among the cultivators in the unmatched realm, how many of them were from prestigious sects? All of them had something to ask of the unmatched old man. The peerless old man was clearly aware of their struggle. Situpa wanted to kill Qin Wendian, and Lin Haoyan and the others had helped to stop him, only to die at the hands of Qin Wendian. Who was in the right and who was in the wrong? If they were to be convicted, they were all guilty. The matters of today shall end here. If you all want to fight, go to the heavenly steel platform and let the people of the Azure continent witness it. Let's see if you all have the face to lose. As the sound of his voice faded, old man Wu Shuang's aura vanished into nothingness. Sidupo's expression was ice cold, his gaze sweeping over Qin Wendian. The killing intent in his eyes intensified. 3 days later, I'll be waiting for you at the heavenly steel platform. Sidupa coldly stated, after which, his silhouette flickered as he appeared in front of Yu Bingying. The two of them held hands as they left the unmatched realm. 3 days later, they would kill Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian retracted his demonic qi, as well as his astral souls. The tyrannical aura he was exuding gradually dissipated into nothingness. Evidently, he was heavily injured. In terms of talent, he was stronger than Situpa. But in terms of combat prowess, he was weaker than Situpa. After all, there was a disparity between the two of them in terms of cultivation level and mandates. For cultivators, even the slightest disparity was akin to a chasm. If it weren't for the fact that he had many trump cards up his sleeves, as well as his talent, he would have long since died in Situpo's hands. Landing on the ground, Qin Wendian once again turned his gaze onto Li Shiyu and the others from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Li Shiyu coldly snorted as she glanced at Fan Lu. After which, she turned to Xian Xian and stated, Xian Xian, Situpo will definitely win 3 days from now. At that time, Qin Wendian will die for sure. Fan Lu is a friend of Qin Wendian, and Qin Wendian killed Lin Haoyan and the rest. Although Situpa didn't say anything today, he will definitely not spare Qin Wendian. Sister Shiyu, Qin Wendian is only at the 6th level of Yuanfu, while Situpa is at the 8th level. Being able to fight to such an extent, The difference in talent between the two of them can be seen with a single glance. The heavenly steel steps doesn't depend on one's combat prowess, but rather, one's talent, one's will, and one's conviction. Who said that he would lose to Situpa? Li Xiu coldly snorted. Situpa was too careless today, and he didn't manage to kill Qin Wenyan. If not, do you think he would still be alive? Xian Xian, don't be so optimistic. Even if his talent is high, Fan Lu is not him. How can Fan Lu be worthy of you? Fan Lu was incomparably depressed when he heard this. He then spoke, "Beautiful maiden, do you want to spar with me?" Senior said that the heavenly steel platform is open to all of us from the unmatched realm. How about we go there and give it a try? You. Li Xiu disdainfully replied, "If you lose, will you voluntarily leave Xian Exin?" She also wanted to go to the heavenly steel platform. How could she miss out on such a good opportunity? Isn't this unfair to me? Even if I win, you won't be able to make decisions for Xian Xian. Fan Li's eyes flickered as he meekly stated, "How about this, if I win, you can be my concubine." Xian Xian's eyes widened as she stared at Fan Lu, resembling a beautiful tigress. "I'm just joking." Fan Li's smile trembled. "How can such a woman be worthy of a handsome genius like me? Just you wait." Li Xiu coldly glanced at Fan Lu. With a wave of her sleeves, she led the people from the Mystic Maiden Palace away. The matter regarding the heavenly steel platform naturally had to be reported to the Mystic Maiden Palace, as well as the matter regarding Xian Exin. Seeing Li Xiu and the others leaving, Xian Xian's beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of worry. However, she only saw Fan Lu holding onto her dainty hands as he spoke. "Don't worry, this genius will definitely shock the people from the Mystic Maiden Palace 3 days later, and after that, they will acknowledge me as their son-in-law." Seeing that Fan Lu didn't forget to boast, Xian Xian couldn't help but laugh. Although this damnable fatty was a little shameless, being together with him truly made her happy. She was even happier than when she was with the Mystic Maiden Palace. He would always think of all sorts of ways to make her happy. This kind of feeling was very beautiful, very sweet. "Boss, are you all right?" Fan Lu and the rest turned their gazes onto Qin Wenyan. "I'm fine, my body can take it." Qin Wenyan laughed. The blood in his body was still churning, recovering from his injuries. A smile could be seen on his face, and no one would be able to tell that he was the one who had fought earlier. "Indeed, I can take it. You are too monstrous. If I fought against Sidipe, I'm afraid I would be insta-killed." Ouyang Guangxing couldn't help but to admire Qin Wenyan. Despite being at the 6th level of Yuanfu, he was able to fight against Sidipe to such an extent. The number 1 astral soul in the War Beast Index, as well as the demonic transformation art. This fellow was simply too powerful. However, you have to be careful. With just that cultivation technique of yours, I'm afraid it's even stronger than some of the overlord powers in the demon continent. It's very difficult for others to not covet it. You have to understand that the cultivation technique you're cultivating in is very likely something that they've bitterly searched for but could not obtain. Ouyang Guangxing reminded. Qin Wenyan nodded his head lightly. Back then when he was cultivating the fiend transformation art, the Azure Emperor had left a message for him. But today, when facing against the tyrannical Sidipe, he had no choice but to unleash his full strength. As for the future, he could only be more cautious and try to raise his strength as fast as possible. After the ranking battle, if he stepped into the peak of Yuanfu, it would be best if he could enter closed-door seclusion to break through to Heavenly Dipper. Although the competition between the geniuses of Yuanfu seemed impressive, in reality, they had yet to come into contact with the truly powerful characters. They were only Yuanfu cultivators, and many Heavenly Dipper sovereigns didn't even bother to look at Yuanfu. Only by stepping into Heavenly Dipper would they be able to truly step onto the ladder of power. What's going on with the Heavenly Steel platform? Qin Wenyan inquired. The Heavenly Steel is an ancient will that manifests illusions, allowing one's talent to undergo a transformation. In any case, the Heavenly Steel can reap the lives of others, but it can also allow one's strength to rise to a higher level. It's an extremely rare treasure that is rarely open to the public. Now that old man Qin Wenyan is able to borrow the Heavenly Steel, It's undoubtedly a great opportunity for us. Ouyang Quangsheng's voice was filled with anticipation. This time around, the battle between Sidu Pe and Qin Wenyan wasn't a bad thing. It gave everyone a chance. For the next 3 days, the geniuses of the unmatched realm all left the unmatched realm, informing their respective clans or sects as they headed towards the heavenly steel platform. This piece of news also spread out at a terrifying speed towards the Azure continent. Only now did the major powers of the Azure continent hear of a new name, Qin Wenyan. In the unmatched realm, there was actually a young man at the 6th level of Yuanfu who wasn't even 20 years of age who fought against Sidu Pe from the Sword Extinction sect, killing Lin Haoyan and the rest. This news caused many of the juniors of the Sword Extinction sect to feel a sense of loss of face. As for the elders of the sect, they didn't pay much attention to it. Every demon-level genius had to go through many rounds of selection, and since Lin Haoyan died in the hands of someone with a lower cultivation base than him, it was impossible for the elders of the sect to seek revenge. Killing Qin Wenyan would be left to Sidu Pe. And the heavenly steel platform attracted the attention of countless people in the Azure continent. For the sake of safety, Ouyang Quangsheng first mobilized some experts from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, in case there were any hidden dangers. Who knew if someone would ambush and kill Qin Wenyan before the battle started? Hence, he had to be more cautious. Today, the number of experts in the heavenly steel platform was as many as the clouds. Many of the major powers of the Azure continent had sent their disciples to cultivate in the unmatched realm. Today, they all had a chance to ascend the heavenly steel steps. In the vast area, experts from all over the Azure continent gathered. Their gazes stared ahead as they inclined their heads. At the end of the flight of stairs, there were 3 gigantic stone monuments, simple and unadorned, exuding an ancient aura, yet extremely clean. Below the stone monuments, an old man clad in tattered robes was quietly sweeping the dust off the steps. It was as though he had been repeating this action for an eternity, as though he didn't know fatigue. Boom! From afar, at the top of the heavenly steel platform, the sound of a bell reverberated through the air. After which, streams of astral light cascaded onto the heavenly steel. Instantly, the color of the sky changed as resplendent astral light descended, landing on the ancient stone monuments. In an instant, a mysterious intent enveloped the entire space. The astral light descended, the ancient will of the heavenly steel. The 3 heavenly steel steps shone with resplendent resplendence. Bzz. A raging wind gusted by as a silhouette appeared at the bottom of the heavenly steel steps, staring up at the skies. The wind howled unceasingly as numerous silhouettes descended, causing the eyes of many to gleam with sharpness. The geniuses of the unmatched realm were all gathered here. At this moment, a silhouette soared through the air. This was none other than Sidu Pe. His gaze swept through the surroundings before landing on a certain location. Over there, Ouyang Quangsheng, Qin Wenyan, Fan Lu and the rest were all gathered together. In the past 10 years, the 27 steps of the heavenly steel steps have been opened 3 times. The highest number of people who managed to reach the 18th step was the 18th. Today, I shall break through this record. Sidu Pe slowly spoke, his sharp gaze riveted onto Qin Wenyan. Chapter 328. Qin Wenyan glanced at Sidu Pe before shifting his gaze away, staring at the heavenly steel steps in front of him. A mysterious and majestic energy enveloped the entire heavenly steel steps, and the light circulating around the heavenly steel steps seemed to contain a mysterious intent. This time around, it wasn't only those he met in the unmatched realm who were here. In the air ahead, there were also several silhouettes with extraordinary auras, exuding an aura that wasn't any weaker than Sidu Pe's. Sidu Pe would definitely become a heaven's chosen of the Sword Extinction sect. However, he was still a step away from challenging the heavenly fate rankings. In the Azure continent, those rankers on the heavenly fate rankings had all gone to the unmatched realm to cultivate. Recently, they were either in closed-door seclusion or preparing to break through to Heavenly Dipper, in preparation for the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. But today, how could they miss out on such an opportunity? In the Ouyang aristocrat clan, other than Ouyang Quangsheng's side, there were still 2 other camps. One of them was the first camp. A young man clad in violet robes stood in the air. Not far away from him, Duan Qingshan and Ouyang Ting stood there. That young man was a heavens chosen from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, Ouyang Jing. He was ranked number 10 on the latest heavenly fate rankings. However, it was rumored that Hua Taishu and a few others had already stepped into Heavenly Dipper. At the end of this year, after the trip to the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, the heavenly fate rankings would undergo a huge change. This was the usual practice of Grand Xia. Usually, there would only be minor changes, but once every 3 years, the Venerate Heavens sect would remove those who had already stepped into Heavenly Dipper before rearranging the remaining rankers according to their battle records. Hence, many people would only look at the heavenly fate rankings once every 3 years. If this was the case, and if there were no more powerful characters appearing later on, Ouyang Jing might have a chance to enter the top 8. The Ouyang aristocrat clan had 2 heavens chosen in the Yuanfu realm, Ouyang Jing and Duan Qingshan. Not only that, Ouyang Guangxing had also reserved a spot for himself. Over there, Zhang Lungfeng from the multidirectional Thunderwind sect has also arrived. The gazes of the crowd shifted onto a young man with a cold expression. This was a heavens chosen from the multidirectional Thunderwind sect, ranked number 12 on the heavenly fate rankings. Other than this, on the side of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Li Xiu stood beside a beautiful young lady. That young lady glanced in the direction of Qin Wendian, glanced at Qin Wendian, Fan Lu and the rest before shifting her gaze onto Xian Exin. Xian Exin, come here. Xian Yan, ranked number 17 on the heavenly fate rankings, a heavens chosen from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Oh! Xian Exin glanced at Fan Lu before moving towards Xian Yan. You, Xiu and the rest, follow me to challenge the heavenly steel steps. Xian Yan spoke, yet she didn't mention anything about Fan Lu. Ice Shadow, is that him? In the direction of the Azure Emperor Palace, a figure beside Yu Bingying pointed his finger in the direction of Qin Wendian as he asked. Yu Bingying nodded, her eyes flickering with coldness. If Situpa wins, he will definitely kill this brat. But if Situpa fails, there's still me. That person spoke. He was none other than a heavens chosen from the Azure Emperor Palace, Yu Bufan. Yu Bufan didn't conceal his voice at all. In the surroundings, the gazes of the crowd all landed on Qin Wendian. This brat? Is he the rumored young man Qin Wendian who turned the entire unmatched realm upside down? It's rumored that he obtained the privilege to cultivate in the 36 mountains, the same as Situpa. Not only that, he even killed Lin Haoyan and the other experts from the Sword Extinction sect. Situpa's Sword of Extinction actually failed to take his life. His third astral soul is said to be the Demon Sovereign Astral Soul, ranked number 1 in the Warbeast Index. Such an astral soul is even more superior compared to the heavens chosen in the Azure continent. As for the fatty beside him, his name is Fan Lu. He's proficient in archery and was accepted as a disciple by the Unmatched Realm's Arrow Emperor. The Arrow Emperor is one of the top experts in archery in the entire Grand Xia Empire, killing enemies from 1,000 miles away. This fatty's looks are truly unremarkable, yet the little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace actually fell in love with him. How interesting. Xian Xian is still young. In a few more years, there would surely be many heavens chosen pursuing her. I wonder why she fell in love with that fatty. Beneath the heavenly steel, the sunlight cascaded downwards, and experts were as common as the clouds. However, the focus of the crowd was actually a group of young men whom they were initially unfamiliar with in the Azure continent. The reason why the old man from the Unmatched Realm wanted to borrow the heavenly steel was because of the conflict between Qin Wendian and Situpa, and also because Qin Wendian's friend, Fan Lu, was in love with the little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace. Not only that, Ouyang Guangxing, who had always had his eyes on the top of his head, was walking together with them. The crowd wanted to see how this group of people would perform on the heavenly steel steps. On top of the heavenly steel steps, the old man with the broom slowly walked to the side as he calmly stated, "Those who wish to ascend the heavenly steel steps, be prepared to bear the consequences." The hearts of many trembled, as many rumors regarding the heavenly steel steps flashed through their minds. The 27 steps could prove one's talent, but it was also a path of no return. In the ancient times, there were many geniuses who failed to climb the heavenly steel steps, never to rise again. Hence, there was a saying in the Azure continent, unless one's talent was demon level, they wouldn't be able to ascend the heavenly steel steps. Not entering was better than entering. However, at this moment, the people who had just arrived were all cultivators of the unmatched realm. Even if they didn't care about the attention of the crowd, they still wanted to test their own talent. All of them were extremely excited as they stepped out, moving towards the bottom of the heavenly steel steps. Sidipu, Qin Wenin, Ouyang Zheng, Zhang Lengfeng, Xian Yan Yubufan, Duan Qingshan, Ouyang Quangxing, Fan Lu, Xian Exin, and the others were naturally the most eye-catching. Other than them, there were also some other rankers on the heavenly fate rankings who had arrived. In the past 10 years, the heavenly steel steps had opened a total of 3 times, but the highest one had reached was only the 18th step. Today, would there be anyone who would be able to break through? Situpa didn't even spare a glance at Qin Wenin. He stepped forth and was the first to ascend the heavenly steel steps. At the first step, he halted as he carefully sensed the ancient will of the heavenly steel steps. If one didn't ascend the heavenly steel steps, no one would know what Situpa had encountered. Fan Lu. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Fan Lu turned his gaze over, only to see Xian Yan. Beside her were Lu Shi, who had once been tortured by Qin Wenin, Wang Zhao's girlfriend, Qiao Xian, Li Xiu and Xian Exin. These people were all geniuses that were qualified to enter the unmatched realm. The maidens of the mystic maiden palace stood together, a sight that was extremely pleasing to the eye. If you can't ascend as high as me today, you better leave Xian Xian alone. Xian Yan coldly spoke as she stepped forth, similarly ascending the heavenly steel steps. Ouyang Jing and Zhang Lengfeng glanced at each other, their gazes filled with hostility as they stepped forth together. Yu Bufan and Yu Bingying stood together. They coldly glanced at Qin Wenin before stepping forth as well. Duan Qingshan and Ouyang Ting stood together. Duan Qingshan encouraged Ouyang Ting. Ting, since you can enter the unmatched realm, you can also ascend the heavenly steel steps. Ouyang Ting heavily nodded her head. She, the unruly young miss of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, could feel a sense of immense pressure when she ascended the heavenly steel steps together with the other geniuses of the Yuanfu realm in the Azure continent. Most probably, the powers behind them were all secretly observing their performance. Ouyang Ting, with your temperament, I advise you not to go up. I'm afraid you won't be able to take the blow. Ouyang Quangxing stared at Ouyang Ting as he spoke, his words causing the expression in Ouyang Ting's eyes to change. I'm saying this for your own good. But since you don't want to listen, just pretend I didn't say anything. Ouyang Quangxing didn't mind. After which, he turned to Qin Wenin and the rest and whispered in a low voice, "Be careful." Qin Wenin and the rest nodded their heads as their auras gushed forth. Inclining their heads, they saw that Situpa had already ascended the 3rd step of the heavenly steel steps. After widening the distance between them, Qin Wenin and the rest finally stepped out, landing heavily on the 1st step, officially stepping onto the heavenly steel steps. Bzz. A wondrous glow enveloped them, as though they were the only ones left in this world. This feeling was akin to facing the heavenly steel steps alone. In the air, the 3 heavenly steels enveloped Qin Wenin, as though there was a pair of eyes staring at him. Can your body of flesh and blood withstand the power you're exerting? A voice rang out in Qin Wentian's mind, reverberating unceasingly. Instantly, a terrifying pressure enveloped him, causing him to feel his entire body tightening. If he relaxed even a little, he would be blasted off the heavenly steel steps. Can your body of flesh and blood withstand the power you're exerting? Naturally. Qin Wentian opened his eyes, as a demonic light flickered in them. Demonic qi gushed forth from him as his blood surged. Taking a step forward, he ascended the 2nd step. Rumble! A terrifying force abruptly blasted into Qin Wentian's body, akin to a formless lightning bolt. This strike caused the blood in his body to churn violently as he involuntarily let out a groan of agony. Qin Wentian's steps grew even more resolute, as he firmly nailed himself to the 1st step. His gaze was incomparably resolute as the energy in his body seethed. This was only the 2nd step, How could it waver his determination? Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with incomparable sharpness as he stared at the resplendent heavenly steel. Stepping forth, Qin Wentian's feet landed on the third step, causing a thunderous boom to echo out as a raging wind kicked up. Boom! An even more terrifying force blasted into his body, causing him to bend his waist as he involuntarily staggered backwards. His countenance paled. No wonder Ouyang Guangxing was so cautious. What a terrifying flight of stairs! Not far away from him, a scream of agony rang out. Tingya! Duan Qingshan exclaimed in shock. Turning his head, he saw Ouyang Ting being blasted down the heavenly steel steps. Ouyang Ting was sprawled on the ground. Her beautiful countenance was extremely pale as she coughed out fresh blood. The second step, she had only taken the second step and she was blasted down. How could this be? Was this her talent? Her pale eyes stared at the crowd in the surroundings. Numerous pairs of eyes were staring at her. Ouyang Ting only felt ridicule in their gazes. She, the chosen of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, was actually so lowly at this moment. No! Ouyang Ting let out a scream of agony. Many in the crowd sighed in their hearts as they stared at her. This was the cruelty of the heavenly steel steps. She had only taken the second step, but from now on, a heart demon would be born in Ouyang Ting's heart. How could she continue to advance? Her conviction had been crushed. If one wasn't a monster, one wouldn't be able to look at the heaven monument. Chapter 329. Ouyang Ting was blasted down, but other than Duan Qingshan, the others didn't mind Ouyang Ting's failure at all. Today, they stepped on the heavenly steel path, contending against Gunyan. If they lost too miserably, how would their sects and clans feel? This was an opportunity, but also a path of destruction. They couldn't afford to lose. Everyone was incomparably cautious with every step they took. After every step they took, they would pause for a moment, stabilizing their state of mind. Qin Wenyan had already stepped onto the fourth step. That earlier attack directly caused his internal organs to churn. Terror filled his heart. How difficult was this heavenly steel path? Can your body of flesh and blood withstand the force of your attacks? That voice reverberated in his mind, wanting to shake his heart. Qin Wenyan stared at the resplendent astral light shining from the heavenly steel, his eyes gleaming with an unwavering light. This force seems to be my own strength. The stronger my strength is, the more terrifying the attacks against me would be. If I increase my own strength, the more powerful my attacks would be. Qin Wenyan silently mused. On the heavenly steel path, nobody could conceal their strength. They would be suppressed to the limit by the heavenly steel path, and this limit would be used to attack themselves. His body transformed, transforming into a demonic beast. Qin Wentian's bloodline surged as he closed his eyes, ignoring the path ahead. In his heart, a candle flame lit up, revealing his true nature. His will wouldn't waver. Within his body, boundless strength could be felt. This was the explosive strength of his flesh and blood, and also the strength of his conviction. Boom! Qin Wentian's steps were resolute as he stepped onto the fifth step. A thunderous rumbling sound echoed out as the blood in his body churned frenziedly. However, his heart remained unwavering. Such an injury wouldn't obstruct his path of advancement. Taking another step, Qin Wenyan stepped onto the sixth and seventh step. A violent surge of demonic energy from the supreme ancient immemorial realms frenziedly slammed into his body. A piercing sound rang out as Qin Wenyan coughed out a mouthful of blood. However, his steps remained as steady as ever. Qin Wenyan took the eighth step. As his step landed, a terrifying hurricane seemed to blow between the heavens and the earth, and a terrifying force rushed over. Qin Wenyan moved his feet slightly, as if he was rooted to the ground. Boom, boom. Two consecutive terrifying attacks caused Qin Wenyan to take a step back, almost reaching the edge of the ground. His face was pale, and after he regained his balance, he spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. His heart was in turmoil, and his body was in turmoil. On the 8th step of the heavenly steel, Qin Wenyan is the 5th person to stand firm. No wonder he's a genius of the unmatched realm. The gazes of the crowd were all focused on the heavenly steel steps. On the sixth step, Qiao Xian from the Mystic Maiden Palace was blasted down. Wang Xiao was just about to attempt the seventh step when his countenance stiffened. He turned his head back only to see Qiao Xian collapsing at the bottom of the steps, her aura fluctuating wildly as she coughed out blood. Luckily, her life wasn't in danger. The eighth step is a threshold. Let's see how many people can stabilize themselves. The gazes of the crowd turned sharp, only to see Sidupo, Ouyang, Zhang Lengfeng, Qin Wenyan and the others all stopping at the eighth step, calming their auras. Evidently, they could sense that there was something different about the eighth step. 9 was the limit, but it was also a variable. Since there were already changes on the eighth step, who knew what would happen on the ninth step? They had to be extremely cautious. Those who reached the eighth step first stopped, and those who followed behind them followed suit. However, there were also quite a few who were blasted down from the eighth step. The disciple of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Lu Shi, was also extremely arrogant, but when she stepped onto the eighth step, she was ruthlessly blasted down. She didn't even have time to catch her breath before she fainted. Those who were usually pursuing her were all busy with their own matters. They naturally didn't have the time to pay attention to her. Only the female disciples of the Mystic Maiden Palace dashed forward and brought her away. Wang Xiao howled in rage. His entire body was as sharp as a weapon, indestructible. His actions caused the eyes of many in the crowd to light up. This Wang Xiao from the War Continent was truly a character. Being able to step onto the eighth step was already an extremely good result. Fatty Fan Li's face was flushed red. The blood in his body surged as golden flames ignited around him. Letting out a low roar, he also stabilized his footing on the eighth step, standing shoulder to shoulder with Qin Wenyan. Ouyang Guangxing also stabilized his footing. His aura was as steady as a mountain, and although he was slower by a hair, he gave off a sense of steadiness. This didn't match his usual reputation of being a maniac. Chu Mang stared at the skies, his eyes filled with an unparalleled determination. He also stepped onto the eighth step. 9 is the limit, the ninth step. Be careful. Ouyang Guangxing spoke in a low voice. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wenyan had already stepped out. The instant his foot landed, it was as though he was standing in the middle of a tempestuous storm. Rumble! A gigantic wave blasted over, causing his tiny boat to float. Rumble! An even more violent storm blasted over, causing the tiny boat to shatter. Qin Wenyan held back his blood, but he didn't spit it out. Rumble! The third wave of attacks was even more violent and powerful, causing Qin Wenyan to bend his waist. His body felt as though it was about to be flung through the air. However, Qin Wenyan only managed to stand up straight again. This was only the ninth step. How could he be defeated? Stretching out his hands, he wiped away the traces of blood at the corner of his lips. Instantly, his sleeves were stained red with blood. His closed eyes finally opened as he stabilized his footing on the ninth step. 3-layered attacks, increase in strength, be careful. Qin Wenyan spoke in a low voice, warning Fan Le and the rest. Fan Le cast a glance in Xian Xian's direction, only to see Xian Xian looking at him as well. The two of them exchanged a smile. Xian Yan's eyes flickered with a strange light. This Fan Le actually managed to ascend the eighth step as well. However, the ninth step wouldn't be so easy to overcome. I will ascend even higher than you. Fan Le grinned at Xian Yan. Shifting his gaze over, he stepped towards the ninth step. The heavenly steel's light cascaded downwards, landing on Fan Li's slightly plump body. Instantly, Xian Yan only saw Fan Li's body shuddering violently, akin to a duckweed in the wind, on the verge of shattering at any moment. Fan Li's body arched as he coughed out blood unceasingly. However, he eventually stabilized his footing. Turning his head back, he glanced at Xian Yan. The smile on his face was as radiant as the sun. Xian Xian, I won't disappoint you. Fan Le laughed. Xian Xian nodded her head heavily as she and Xian Yan stepped onto the ninth step. Ouyang Guangxing also stepped forward. Chu Mang's eyes were filled with determination as well. This heavenly steel won't be able to stop me. Chu Mang spoke in a low voice as he stepped onto the ninth step. Ignoring the torrential barrage of attacks, his back was ramrod straight, and his eyes were filled with determination. Standing there, he resembled a towering mountain. In the past, his elder brother Chu Wei was like a mountain to him. Now that he had descended, he wanted to become his elder brother's mountain. In that case, he had to ensure that Chu Wei wouldn't die of old age. He had to become stronger. Big bro Chu Mang awesome. A smile broke out on Qin Wentian's face as he stared at Chu Mang. This simple-minded and clumsy number one prodigy of the royal capital was gradually revealing his most tenacious side. Although he didn't speak much, his heart was much more resolute than the majority of people. We will pass the 18th step together. Chu Mang grinned. This heavenly steel won't be able to obstruct our vision. Qin Wentian nodded his head. The spectators below felt their hearts trembling as they witnessed this scene. At the moment of ascending the heavenly steel steps, the various transcendent powers stood together. Qin Wentian, Ouyang Guangxing, Chu Mang and Fan Lu, the four of them stood together. But at this moment, only the four of them stood solidly on the 9th step. Just a few days ago, those who were still nameless in the Azure continent were finally revealing their radiance. Arg. Sidupo's expression stiffened as he turned his head to look at Yu Binging. I will complete the path that you have yet to complete. Sidupo slowly spoke as he stared ahead. His eyes were as resolute as ever as he took another step forward. He was the first to ascend the 10th step. When Sidupo stepped onto the 10th step, he was even more stable compared to when he was on the 9th step. His body didn't waver in the slightest, and this made everyone understand that after he passed the 9th step, the heavenly steel steps would undergo another transformation. Let me scout the path. Qin Wentian took the initiative and stepped onto the 10th step. The instant he stepped on it, he instantly sensed that there was no longer any terrifying energy here. Instead, there was a mysterious intent enveloping him. Can your lowly will withstand the will of the ancients? Another voice rang out in his mind. Qin Wentian gazed at the heavenly steel, only to see a silhouette of him appearing on the heavenly steel. It was as though an ancient will was imprinted on the heavenly steel, gushing into his mind. Qin Wentian felt a terrifying ancient will sweeping through his will, wanting to destroy it. Scram! Qin Wentian howled in rage in his heart as his mandate at the perfection boundary erupted forth. His will of mandates at the mandate boundary transformed into an intense intent, sweeping away the ancient will as it shot towards the heavenly steel in the air. Boom! Qin Wentian's mind violently shuddered. It was as though his mandate of force was being countered by the mandate of force, wanting to destroy his mandate of force. Qin Wentian's mandate collided with the ancient will of the steel. Although he stood there calmly, he understood that the current him was in an even more dangerous situation than before. If he was not careful, his mandate would shatter, and his path of cultivation would collapse. His mandate of dream form and mandate of demonification frenziedly erupted forth. However, a moment later, 3 silhouettes of Qin Wentian appeared on the 3 heavenly steels, staring down at him with a disdainful gaze. Their gazes were ice-cold, and the will of his mandate transformed into an ancient will, wanting to suppress him. Using my mandate to suppress me? How can I allow you to do as you wish? Qin Wentian mumbled, his words causing the hearts of Fan Lu and the rest to tremble. After which, they saw Qin Wentian continuing forward, passing the 10th step and stepping onto the 11th step. This time around, Qin Wentian no longer hesitated. He continued forward, using his strongest mandate to contend against the ancient will of the heavenly steel. Boom, boom, boom. Every step he took seemed calm, yet it caused the hearts of the spectators to palpitate. The gazes of the spectators stared at Qin Wentian's back, filled with determination and determination. 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. In the blink of an eye, Qin Wentian had already stepped onto the 15th step of the heavenly steel. There were only 3 more steps left, and that would be the record for the past 10 years. However, the spectators also understood that the next 3 steps would be the most terrifying. Not only could one injure their opponent, They could even sever their path of cultivation and destroy their life force. Chapter 330. On the 15th step, Qin Wenyan halted his steps. The hearts of the spectators involuntarily trembled as they stared at his back. Would Qin Wenyan's talent be able to surpass those who had stepped onto the heavenly steel steps in the past 10 years? Would he be able to stand on par with the record? Sidu Po's 3 mandates were incomparably terrifying. How could he retreat? Similarly, he continued advancing, his conviction incomparably firm. He, Sidu Po, couldn't afford to lose, and it was impossible for him to lose. In the blink of an eye, Sidu Po and Qin Wenyan were both on the 15th step. Ouyang Jing, Zhang Lungfeng, and the other rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings, how could they be weaker than juniors? They were the first to step onto the Heavenly Fate rankings, and although the Heavenly Steel steps were opened due to the battle between Sidu Po and Qin Wenyan, since they were already here, how could they lose? They were also rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, they similarly couldn't afford to lose. This battle was a battle of talent, a battle of conviction. All of them wanted to break the record, or even surpass the 18th step. This would be extremely beneficial to their future paths. In the direction of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Li Xiu was also forced down the Heavenly Steel steps. Only the 2 princesses, Xian Yan and Xian Xian, were still persisting. Duan Qingshan was also persisting. Ouyang Quangxing, Chu Mang, and Fan Lu were still there. There was one more person who surprised the crowd. Wang Xiao had also reached the 13th step, and his will was extremely powerful, contending against the ancient will. These people are all extremely powerful. Other than the rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings, there are still quite a few of them. However, both Qin Wenyan and Sidu Po have stopped. I'm sure that the 15th step will be extremely difficult. Qin Wenyan's eyes were tightly shut. At this moment, the ancient will from the Heavenly Steel steps grew even more intense, as a terrifying demonic energy gushed forth, wanting to tear him apart. This wasn't an illusion, but a real existence. At the same time, there was also a fearsome dream-type energy, wanting to force him into a deep slumber. For the first time, Qin Wenyan felt an attack from his own mandate. His mandate transformed into a terrifying ancient will, wanting to erase his will. At this moment, Qin Wenyan seemed to be in an independent space. That space was formed by his martial arts will. He sat cross-legged, and above him, there were 3 figures of his evil will. At this moment, his will was fighting against 3 of him. Ancient will like power, ancient will like dream, ancient will like demon. In the consciousness space, Qin Wenyan saw 3 figures blocking his way, as if they were insurmountable. If you take one more step forward, I will sever your will, and destroy your life. The demonic Gunyan spoke evilly, exuding a terrifying demonic aura, as though he was threatening Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan could also sense it. With every step he took, the ancient will grew stronger and stronger. If he took another step forward, this ancient will would definitely reach an extreme state. Qin Wenyan's will closed his eyes. Around him, there were 3 different types of mandates. He didn't seem to care about the words of the ancient will, and continued sitting cross-legged. After a long time, his eyes abruptly opened. His will was incomparably terrifying, wanting to break through the clouds. A thunderous boom rang out as a raging wind kicked up. Qin Wenyan's body didn't waver in the slightest. In that space, the ancient will of force grew even stronger. It bore down on Qin Wenyan's will, transforming into an ancient mountain, a piece of the heavens, suppressing Qin Wenyan's will. Boom! Qin Wenyan's will trembled madly, that dreamlike ancient will gushed over. At this moment, Qin Wenyan actually felt the urge to sleep. The demonic Gunyan attacked once more. Qin Wenyan's mandates were trembling, yet he still opened his eyes and opened his mouth, howling with rage. His strength broke through the heavens and earth as he took another step forward. With a thunderous boom, his will was unyielding. He stepped onto the 16th level, his body as steady as a mountain, not moving an inch. He stabilized himself. The hearts of the spectators trembled. Qin Wenyan had actually also stepped onto the 16th level. Before him, Ouyang, Zhang Lungfeng and Situpa had all stepped onto the 16th level. Next, your path has already reached its end. Situpa faintly spoke. He could actually still speak. Everyone knew that his words were directed at Qin Wenyin. As the sound of his voice faded, Situpa had already stepped onto the 17th level. The hearts of the spectators trembled. Situpa had already stepped onto the 17th level. There was only one more level before he would be able to catch up to the ancient record. On this level, Situpa's silhouette halted, as though he was frozen in place. I'm afraid that Situpa would forcefully interfere in the ranking battle at the end of the year. Based on his strength, if he could break through to the 9th level of Yuanfu, he would have a high chance of becoming one of the top 10 rankers. Situpa was indeed the most demonic genius the Sword Extinction sect had seen in recent years. He had seized the authority to cultivate all 36 mountains in the unmatched realm, causing a temporary gap in the Yuanfu level of the Sword Extinction sect. With no Yuanfu heaven chosen, Situpa would definitely be able to break through. After which, Ouyang also stepped onto the 17th level. Zhang Lungfeng wasn't willing to be outdone. He unleashed his will of mandates to the extreme. Since they were able to become heaven's chosen, there was no need to doubt the strength of their wills and talent. Qin Wentian's silhouette also moved, stepping onto the 17th level. The instant he stepped onto the 17th level, his body froze in place, as though he was frozen in place. It was as though even his breathing had stopped. What's going on? The countenances of the spectators froze. None of the previous contenders were in the same state as Qin Wenyin. It was as though they were all dead. 2 hours passed, 4 hours passed, yet Qin Wenyin was still in the same position. A day later, Wang Xiao was also blasted down the heavenly steel steps. Duan Qingshan, who was attempting the 18th level, was also blasted down as though he had been struck by lightning. Qin Wenyin was still standing there, unmoving. The number of contenders on the heavenly steel steps grew fewer and fewer. Those dazzling geniuses were all blasted down, and only the most dazzling contenders remained. Not only that, they had also broken the record of the past 10 years. In the past 10 years, the heavenly steel steps had been opened 3 times, and the 18th level was the highest level. However, there wasn't just one contender who had stepped onto the 18th level. They were all stuck there, unable to advance any further. The 18th level, when split into 2, was the number of double nines, the second extreme number of nines. I'm going down. Xian Exin had a bitter expression on her face. She felt that she couldn't hold on any longer. The 17th level was her limit, and if she continued to advance, there would only be 2 possibilities. Either she would break through her limits, or she would be heavily injured. Not only that, she felt that the latter was more likely. To Xian Exin, her obsession wasn't as strong as the others. After all, she was still a girl, and she was still very young. After speaking, Xian Exin pushed out with both her palms, as a powerful rebounding force blasted her back. When her feet landed on the ground, her body unceasingly retreated, yet she wasn't injured. This was because she had voluntarily come down, and not because she was being blasted down. The little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Xian Exin, reaching the 17th level is already not bad. Fan Lu is still persisting on the 17th level. There's also Qin Wenyin, Chu Mang and Ouyang Quangxing. They're all stuck there, unable to advance any further. Xian Yan has already reached the 18th level. Her mandates are all at the perfection boundary, incomparably powerful. The gazes of the crowd shifted onto Xian Yan's silhouette, as well as onto Qin Wenyin. Most probably, Qin Wentian's friend had already reached his limit, and was about to lose to Xian Yan. After all, Xian Yan was a heaven's chosen of the Azure continent, ranked number 17 on the heavenly fate rankings. Break. An earth-shattering roar thundered out, causing the crowd to be startled. They inclined their heads, only to see Chu Mang standing beside Fan Lu. His long hair fluttered in the wind as he opened his eyes. Within his eyes, an arrow could be seen piercing through the heavenly steel, a gigantic axe cleaving apart the heavens and earth. Stepping forward, a fearsome mandate erupted forth from him. With a resolute heart, there was nothing it couldn't break. Chu Mang's goal had always been simple. Only by becoming stronger and stronger would he be able to support his elder brother's cultivation, allowing his elder brother to not grow old. The terrifying ancient will reverberated in Chu Mang's sea of consciousness. His eyes were incomparably red as he stood there, throwing his head back and howling to the heavens. As long as his will remained, so what of the heavenly steel? Who could destroy him? Bzz. Numerous terrifying mandates erupted forth from his body, transforming into beams of resplendent light. That was the aura of a perfection boundary. He wanted to use the perfection boundary of a single law attribute to break apart the suppression of the ancient will. This ancient will would only grow stronger when facing the strong. Only by holding on to the strongest will would one not be influenced by the ancient will. If he failed, the consequences would be extremely tragic. Given Chu Mang's craziness, if he didn't break through, he would definitely be killed by the ancient will. Stabilized, Chu Mang tied the record. I won't lose. At this moment, a voice echoed out from Fan Li's mouth. When he opened his eyes, his gaze was exceptionally clear. It was as though Xian Xian's pure countenance could be seen on the heavenly steel. Although Fan Li was a jovial person, he knew that despite his unattractive appearance, Xian Xian still chose him. Because of this, he was mocked and ridiculed by others. Even Xian Xian was mocked and ridiculed as well. He would always smile as though he didn't care, but in his heart he truly cared. For the sake of fighting for his pride, he couldn't allow Xian Xian to suffer the disdainful looks of others. He didn't want Xian Xian to be the target of criticism in the mystic maiden palace. He wanted to prove to everyone that Xian Xian hadn't chosen him wrongly. He was a genius, Fan Li. Stepping out, Fan Li's body glowed with golden flames as a terrifying heat permeated the air. He stepped onto the 18th step. Bzz. The raging flames emanated a terrifying aura, incinerating his body. Resplendent beams of golden light erupted from his eyes as his powerful will pierced through the heavenly steel. The three wills of his mandate were being refined in the midst of the raging flames. He was Fan Li, Fatty Fan Li, Genius Fan Li. Immersed in the flames, he stood on the 18th step. This is awesome. Ouyang Guangxing howled in rage. Both Fan Li and Chu Mang had done it, how could he fall behind? Stepping out, he too dashed up the stairs. If he failed, so what if he was heavily injured? Even if he didn't break through, how could he be worthy of being called Ouyang Guangxing? Ouyang Guangxing stepped onto the 18th step, tying the record. Awesome! The hearts of the spectators sighed in admiration. Currently, there weren't many people remaining on the heavenly steel steps. Only Ouyang Zheng, Zhang Lengfeng, Shen Yan and Yu Bufan remained. These four were ranked within the top 36 of the heavenly fate rankings, as well as Sidu Pe, Fan Li, Chu Mang, Ouyang Guangxing and Qin Wenyin. Of the 9 remaining, 8 were on the 18th step. Only Qin Wenyin remained on the 17th step. Awesome, there's no need to mention Ouyang Zheng and the other 3. Sidu Pe and Qin Wenyin are here to compete, but Chu Mang, Fan Li, Ouyang Guangxing and the others who came together with Qin Wenyin are all so terrifying. After today's battle, I'm afraid there will be many major powers willing to recruit them. However, victory and defeat had yet to be determined. Sidu Pe versus Qin Wenyin, Shen Yan versus Fan Li, Ouyang Zheng versus Zhang Lengfeng. All of them held an incomparably strong conviction in their hearts. Would they be able to continue advancing? Next, other than Qin Wenyin, the others only needed a single step to surpass the record of the past 10 years. Who would be able to break it? Qin Wenyin, who was still on the 17th step, would he still have a chance to defeat Sidu Pe? Chapter 331. The scene at the top of the heavenly steel steps caused the spectators to feel an intense sense of shock. 8 people stood on the 18th step while a single person stood on the 17th step. Such a magnificent scene had never been seen before in the past 10 years. It's rumored that the middle 9 steps test one's mandate. If one's mandate isn't strong enough, without the determination to break through everything, there's no way they would be able to ascend. The mandates of these people were not only strong and stable, they were also incomparably resilient. The spectators mused. But at this moment, all of them halted their steps. 18, the number of double nines, was a hurdle. Taking another step forward was too difficult. If not, in the past 10 years, the geniuses wouldn't have all stopped at this point. This place was the same as the record of the past 10 years. Time slowly flowed by, the 9 of them maintained the same posture, as though they had forgotten the passage of time. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. They were still standing there, their mandates growing stronger and stronger. The 18th step didn't mean stability. If one wanted to stand firm on the 18th step, their mandates had to either be firm or break through. If not, they would still be blasted off the 18th step. On the 18th step, they were overcoming themselves. Their mandates grew stronger and stronger. As long as they didn't lose, they would grow stronger and stronger. Siddhupa has already reached the perfection boundary in all 3 of his mandates. He's only at the 8th level of Yuanfu and has yet to step into the 9th level. As long as he steps into the 9th level of Yuanfu, he would definitely be ranked within the top 36 of the heavenly fate rankings. The spectators sighed in their hearts. Siddhupa was someone who was destined to become a heaven's chosen. Now that he encountered the heavenly steel steps, how could he not grab hold of this opportunity? This appearance of the heavenly steel steps was an extremely good opportunity for demon-level geniuses. But to the mediocre, it was a nightmare. Just like Ouyang Ting, the heavenly steel steps allowed her to see what level she was at. Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lungfeng are about to attempt it. At this moment, the spectators only saw Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lungfeng advancing towards the final 9 steps. The 2 of them were ranked 10th and 12th on the heavenly fate rankings respectively. Hence, right from the start, they already had the intention to compete against each other. What was waiting for them on the final 9 steps of the heavenly steel steps? Would Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lungfeng be able to surpass their limits? Everyone was looking at him. Fresh blood splattered through the air. Almost at the same instant, Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lungfeng were flung through the air, directly falling from the 18th step, flying back to where they came from. A few silhouettes soared through the air, catching the 2 of them. These were the experts from the Ouyang aristocrat clan and multidirectional Thunderwind sect. Qin Wenyan sighed in his heart. Ultimately, he still failed to break the record. However, tying the record also proved their talent. After all, in the past 10 years, those who could reach the 18th level were all extremely outstanding people. When Xian Yan and Yu Bufan saw this scene, they knew that they were about to face the strongest test. Ancient Dream Will, you can't stop me. At this moment, a soft sigh rang out. After that, the crowd saw Qin Wenyan, who was on the 17th step, moving. His foot landed on the 18th step, and abruptly, his martial will trembled. The ancient will was like force, dreamlike, demon-like, all of them frenziedly attacked. However, Qin Wenyan's will of mandate remained unextinguished. No matter how the tempest of attacks rained down on him, no matter how much stronger his will of mandate was, he was unyielding, and undying. His steps were as steady as a mountain, standing on the 18th step, becoming the 9th person to reach the 18th step. Today, 9 people had reached the 18th step. But at this moment, the 2 strongest among them, Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lungfeng, had both failed. Only 7 people remained, and all of them were still on the 18th step. Xian Yan finally steeled her heart and continued to rush upwards. With an incomparably intense will, she stepped onto the 19th step. However, an instant later, she let out a scream of agony as she was flung through the air like a kite with a broken string. Xian Yan's attempt to reach the 19th step was announced as a failure. Now, only 6 people remained. After that, Yu Bufan also attempted to reach the 19th step, but similarly he failed. Only 5 people remained. The 4 heavens chosen ranked within the top 36 of the heavenly fate rankings had all failed to reach the 19th step. Such a scene was extremely tragic. Siddhupa, Qin Wenyan, Ouyang Quangxing, Chu Mang and Fan Le. Did these 5 still have any hope? The distance of a single step is akin to a chasm. I, Siddhupa, will not lose, I cannot lose. Siddhupa inclined his head, staring at the heavenly steel. His silhouette seemed to be there. How could he, Siddhupa, be defeated by Qin Wenyan? He could leave the unmatched realm, but he couldn't allow himself to be expelled. He couldn't afford to lose so much face. Among the 4 heavens chosen of the Azure continent, none of them were from the Sword Extinction sect. All of them had failed. He, Sidpa, couldn't be defeated, not only for himself, but also for the Sword Extinction sect. His heart had never been this resolute before. He stepped out, and in that instant, Sidpa's entire body was drenched in cold sweat. It was as though he had just experienced a life-and-death battle. With a howl of rage, boundless energy erupted forth, protecting his body from destruction. He was Sidpa, he had to win. Boom! Another step. Sidpa stood on the 19th step as a terrifying shockwave swept across the entire staircase. That silhouette of his back caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. That was Sidpa of the Sword Extinction sect. He stood on the 19th step, accomplishing what Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lungfeng had failed to do. He had broken the record of the past 10 years. Today, he would become the most dazzling character. It was as though the heavenly steel steps had been opened for him. I won. A smile could be seen on Yu Bingying's face. This was her man, Sidpa. Even though she was injured and her body was still trembling, she didn't care. Sidpa had become the most dazzling character. She glanced at those from the Azure Emperor Palace, as well as those from the Sword Extinction sect. They should all be proud of Sidpa. She then glanced at the silhouette of Qin Wenyin. His death date would soon arrive. Seems like an extremely powerful character will appear on the heavenly fate rankings. Ouyang Zheng inclined his head, staring at Sidpa as he spoke in a low voice. Xian Yan nodded her head lightly. Sidpa had accomplished what she had failed to do. If I win, don't interfere with me and Xian Xian anymore. At this moment, Fan Li's voice abruptly drifted over, causing Xian Yan's eyes to narrow. After which, she saw Fan Li's chubby frame trembling as he advanced towards the 19th step. Xian Yan, I will defeat you for sure. With a howl of rage, both of Fan Li's feet landed on the 19th step. At this moment, it was as though he didn't fear death. That chubby frame of his, in the eyes of the spectators, grew taller and taller. Nobody would have thought that fatty Fan Lu would actually ascend to the 19th step. Fan Lu. Xian Xian's beautiful eyes were filled with hot tears as she stared at his back. Pucci sounds rang out as fresh blood splattered from Fan Li's body. Yet he still stood there, not moving an inch. Xian Yan, did I win? Fan Li's voice drifted over. Xian Yan stared at his bleeding body as her heart and soul trembled. She opened her mouth, yet she didn't know what to say. Voila! Fresh blood gushed forth. Fan Li's arms were on the verge of breaking apart. Senior sister. Xian Xian stared at Xian Yan as tears flowed unceasingly down her cheeks. Xian Yan nodded her head lightly as she stared at the skies. I've lost. Ping. As the sound of her voice faded, Fan Li's body flew down from the skies. Xian Xian dashed out, grabbing hold of Fan Lu as she landed on the ground. Fan Lu smiled at her. Xian Xian, you didn't misjudge this genius, right? I didn't misjudge. 2 streams of tears flowed down Fan Li's cheeks. Fan Lu closed his eyes, and with a smile on his face, he fainted. Fan Lu became the second person to break the record. Although he only paused for a short moment, he still stood on the 19th step, breaking the record of the past 10 years. Chu Mang also made his attempt, howling in rage. However, he failed. Although he was defeated, he had no regrets. He had done his best. Ouyang Guangxing also made his attempt. At the instant he stepped onto the 19th step, he cursed, "Fuck, this daddy doesn't want to play anymore." As the sound of his voice faded, he was also jolted down from the impact. However, he was able to defend himself and wasn't seriously injured. He cursed, "Is this heavenly steel something humans can play with?" Too ruthless, he felt as though he was on the verge of death earlier. That pitiful look on Fan Li's face was definitely not an illusion. On the heavenly steel steps, only 2 people remained. Sidpa on the 19th step and Qin Wenyin on the 18th step. This heavenly steel steps had originally been opened for them. Who knew if it was a coincidence, but in the end, only the 2 of them remained. However, could Qin Wenyin really fight against Sidpa? That single step was akin to a chasm. How many people had fallen at that step? Ouyang Jing, Zhang Lengfeng, Xian Yan, Yu Bufan, none of them dared to attempt it. Only Situpa succeeded. As for Fan Lu, he could be considered to have succeeded by half a step. He fought for the sake of love, for the sake of not bringing shame to Xian Exin. He told Xian Yan, the mystic maiden palace, and the people of the Azure continent that he, Fan Lu, wasn't inferior to any of the other geniuses. After Situpa steadied himself, he turned his head and cast a glance at Qin Wenin. Calmly, he stated, "The distance of a single step is akin to a chasm. But the chasm between you and me is definitely not just a single step." As the sound of his voice faded, Sidpo once again stepped onto the 20th step. Boo! The crowd drew in a deep breath, their hearts pounding. Sidpo was still advancing. As for Qin Wenin, his eyes were closed, as though he was still struggling on the 18th step. Was there really a need for this battle? 3 days passed, Qin Wenin was still the same. 10 days passed, Qin Wenin was still the same. 1 month passed, Qin Wenin was still the same. Situpa stepped onto the 21st step, shaking off Qin Wenin by 3 steps, 3 insurmountable chasms. However, they discovered that Qin Wenin, who was still standing there with his eyes closed, was gradually growing stronger. Only when his will reached the perfection boundary would he be able to contend against the ancient will of the heavenly steel. At that time, he would be in his strongest state, advancing forward. Chapter 332. Time flowed by as many people departed. Ouyang Jing, Zhang Lengfeng and the rest all went into closed-door seclusion. Many from the major powers also departed as well. On the heavenly steel steps, only 2 people remained, Situpa and Qin Wenin. No matter how high Situpa's rank was, the rest of the major powers would know that there was no need for them to guard the heavenly steel steps every day. For example, those from the Sword Extinction sect and the Azure Emperor Palace. Other than them, Ouyang Guangxing, Chu Mang, Fan Lu and the rest were also present. 2 months had already passed and the injuries of those who were injured had long since healed. However, Qin Wenin was still standing there, causing Fan Lu and the rest to feel extremely helpless. Currently, the doubts and suspicions regarding Qin Wenin continued unabated. Could it be that he was planning to continue wasting time here? Until Situpa left? Currently, Situpa had already reached the 23rd step, and it seemed as though he was cultivating with his eyes closed. Not many people believed that Qin Wenin would be able to win. The outcome of this battle was already decided. How difficult would it be to ascend from the 18th step to the 23rd step? How long is Qin Wenin going to cultivate for? Xian Exen spoke in a low voice beside Fan Lu. She was also accompanying Fan Lu. The people from the Mystic Maiden Palace, because of Fan Li's outstanding performance, actually didn't intentionally make things difficult for him and Xian Exen. Although this didn't mean that they had agreed to the relationship between them, at the very least, it proved that Fan Li had taken a step forward, causing the Mystic Maiden Palace to not immediately separate them. Could it be that he is intentionally waiting until the end of the year? At that time, Situpa would definitely head to Ginku. That way, even if Qin Wenin was defeated, he would still be able to live. Not far away, Yu Bingying coldly spoke. She had always been paying attention to Situpa. Similarly, she wanted to see the ending. She wanted to see Qin Wentian's defeat. Boom! At this moment, atop the heavenly steel steps, a tyrannical aura gushed forth from Situpa. His back was ramrod straight as he stared at the heavenly steel steps. His cultivation base, 9th level of Yuanfu, his 3 mandates had all reached the perfection boundary. From today onwards, he truly had the qualifications to contend for the top few rankings of the heavenly fate rankings. I broke through. Yu Bingying's beautiful eyes shone with a brilliant light as she smiled. From today onwards, Situpa was no longer a quasi-heavens chosen, but a true heavens chosen. In fact, he might even be the strongest heavens chosen in the current generation of the Sword Extinction sect. Xian Yan and Li Shiyu were also present. When they saw Situpa breaking through, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. Situpa was truly amazing. Speaking of which, I really have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be any heavenly steel steps, and I wouldn't have been able to reach the perfection boundary in such a short period of time. Initially, I thought I would only be able to do so before heading to Ginku. But now I have more time to prepare. Situpa calmly stated, his words causing the crowd to sigh. The battle between Qin Wenin and Situpa had caused the unmatched old man to borrow the heavenly steel. Who would have thought that the unmatched old man would become Situpa's benefactor? Situpa indeed has to thank Qin Wenin. Li Xiu calmly stated. Xian Yan lightly nodded her head. The current Situpa was already strong enough to threaten her. When Qin Wenin was at the 8th level of Yuanfu, his combat prowess was already extremely terrifying. At this moment, Situpa continued, however, although I have to thank you at the end of the heavenly steel steps, I will still take your life. After speaking, Situpa stepped forth once more, as an incomparably terrifying will appeared in his heart. Situpa ascended the 24th step, reaching a terrifying height. The heavenly steel steps are simply too difficult. Just this step alone would allow me to look down on countless heroes. Situpa sighed deeply as he sat down cross-legged on the heavenly steel steps. The 24th step of the heavenly steel steps. The smile on Yu Bingying's face grew even more intense. Other than Situpa, who else would be able to accomplish this? As the sound of her voice faded, from afar, a white-robed silhouette could be seen walking over. This white-robed silhouette was like a transcendent being, exuding an aura of extreme coldness. She slowly walked up the heavenly steel steps. 1 step, 9 steps. After 9 steps, she coughed out a mouthful of blood, but the blood didn't even stain her white robes. It's her! Yu Bingying's beautiful eyes froze, as did Li Xiu and the others. Yun Mingyi, clad in robes as white as snow, exuded an icy aura. She was as elegant as a snow lotus on an icy mountain, unaffected by the mundane world. Yet today she also appeared here, stepping onto the heavenly steel steps. In the blink of an eye, she had already reached the 18th step, standing shoulder to shoulder with Qin Wenin. How powerful! When the spectators saw this, they couldn't help but fall into a daze. Yun Mingyi also had the authority to cultivate in all 36 halls, yet she managed to ascend the 18th step in such a short amount of time. How resolute was her heart! How firm was her will of mandate! Not only that, she didn't halt her steps, she continued advancing, ascending the 19th step, the 20th step. Very swiftly she arrived at the 24th step, standing shoulder to shoulder with Situpa. Situpa's eyes narrowed, his heart pounding as he stared at Yun Mingyi in shock. How could this be? Not long ago, he was still boasting about how difficult the heavenly steel steps were. Just this step alone would allow him to look down on countless heroes. Yun Mingyi didn't halt her steps. She continued ascending the 25th step, the 26th step. Finally, she halted, standing there like a fairy from the mortal world, unexcelled in this world. For Situpa to reach this step, how much effort had he expended? How many heroes had he defeated? However, Yun Mingyi, whose countenance was as cold as ice, had surpassed him in less than an hour. Such a scene caused the spectators to be dumbfounded. Situpa wasn't willing to accept this, he still wanted to compete. With an incomparably intense will in his heart, he continued ascending the 25th step, only a single step away from Yun Mingyi. But this single step caused him to hesitate. At this moment, Qin Wenin finally moved. Qin Wenin moved, he's preparing to ascend the 19th step. The gazes of the spectators instantly landed on Qin Wenin. The demonic qi radiating from him was even stronger than before, as though his life was that of a demon. Stepping out, Qin Wenin landed on the 19th step. 9 beams of light descended from the heavenly steel, landing on Qin Wentian's body. There was no way to evade these 9 beams of light. Puchi! A light sound rang out as the 9 beams of light slashed downwards. Qin Wentian's body twitched. He finally understood why so many geniuses failed at this step, unable to ascend. Flesh and blood, mortal thoughts, and fragile lives, how could they not fear death? Just think about it, who would have such courage and such persistence? An intense pain coursed through his entire body. Qin Wentian's heart turned cold, and in an instant, fresh blood dripped from a certain location on his chest. Over there, a bloody wound could be seen. He finally understood what Fan Lu had experienced, what he had endured. Was this real or was it fake? If it was real, why didn't he die? If it was fake, where did the blood come from? Where did the intense pain come from? Truth and fake, it all depended on a single thought. Qin Wendian took another step forwards, moving towards the 20th step. Without a doubt, Qin Wendian had succeeded. He became the third person after Sidupe, Yun Mingyi, and Fan Lu to be able to stand stably on the 19th step. On the 20th step, a beam of light pierced through Qin Wendian's chest, penetrating through his heart. If one didn't experience this, they wouldn't be able to understand. At this moment, his will determined his life and death. If he retreated a single step, he would die. Qin Wendian laughed as he continued walking forwards. He already understood what kind of terrifying will he was facing now. If his heart wasn't resolute enough, he would die. If his will wavered, he would die. Every step he took was akin to coming into contact with the Grim Reaper. Earlier, if his will wavered in the slightest, that sharp blade that pierced through his heart would become a reality. He would die for real, just like those who were injured when they tried to ascend the 19th step. No wonder the other geniuses retreated. No wonder Ouyang Guangxun cursed out loud. No wonder Fan Lu was so heavily injured for the sake of that will. How can this be? He actually succeeded? The spectators below were all stunned. They saw Qin Wendian ascending step by step without pause. He reached the 21st step, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th. He was the same as Yun Mingyi, ascending in a single breath. At this moment, he was on the same level as Sidupe, who said he had been defeated. Consecutively being surpassed by Yun Mingyi and caught up to by Qin Wendian, the smile on Sidupe's face vanished. He no longer had the confidence he had earlier. Astonishment, shock. How could this be? Why was their conviction so strong? Why were their wills so resolute? You've lost. Qin Wendian calmly stated. Sidupe's countenance changed as he coldly stated, even if you reach this step, what qualifications do you have to say that I've lost? Your will has already wavered. As the sound of Qin Wendian's voice faded, he stepped forwards, ascending the 26th step. In that instant, he was on the same level as Yun Mingyi, overtaking Sik. Powerful! Fan Lu exclaimed in a low voice. Such a counterattack was truly exhilarating. On the heavenly steel steps, Sidupe isn't the only one. Right now, he's the last one. Fan Lu stared at Yu Bingying as though he wanted to refute her earlier words. There were 24 steps on the heavenly steel steps, other than Sidupe, who else could achieve it? If you can do it, how can I fail? Sidupe spoke. After which, he walked up the stairs as well. The 26th level was filled with indescribable pain. His will was being severed bit by bit, and his obsession was being stripped away bit by bit. However, he still stood there. Arga. In a deep breath, Sidupe's body trembled uncontrollably. He stood on the 26th step of the heavenly steel steps. He had accomplished it. The three of them were evenly matched on the 26th step of the heavenly steel path. The last floor. The spectators below felt their hearts pounding violently. They had just witnessed a historical moment. Luckily, they hadn't left yet. The three of them were only a single step away from the highest point of the heavenly steel steps. However, who would dare to take this step? Yun Mingyi was the first to step out. In an instant, the three heavenly steel steps and the boundless ancient will cascaded downwards, landing on her body. In an instant, the spectators witnessed a horrifying scene. Yun Mingyi's body was being stripped away bit by bit, as countless beams of light rained down on her, wanting to destroy her body, wanting to turn her into ashes. Puchi! Blood splattered as Yun Mingyi's body collapsed onto the ground. Her fresh blood dyed her white robes red as she rolled down the steps, turning her entire person into a blood-soaked figure. Yun Mingyi could be said to be the most dazzling person ever since the opening of the heavenly steel steps. She used the shortest amount of time and was only a single step away from the final step. However, She was also the one in the most miserable state. Rolling down the steps unceasingly, her white robes were dyed red with blood, causing the spectators to be unable to bear to look at her. Was she dead or alive? Sidupo's heart trembled. Yun Mingyi's pitiful state caused his conviction to waver once again. On the 26th step, he was already on the verge of collapsing. But Yun Mingyi's condition was much better than his when she stepped onto the 26th step. But now, what would happen if he took another step? No matter how strong his conviction was, it would still waver in the face of death. "You are afraid," Qin Wenyan calmly stated. Sidupo's countenance froze. He stared at Qin Wenyan beside him as he stated, "This final step, nobody can achieve it. At the very least, I want to give it a try." Qin Wenyan had never been so calm before. He wanted to become one of the top 3 rankers in the Heavenly Fate rankings. He wanted to head to the Pill Emperor Hall. How many thorns would there be in his future? At the very least, he couldn't afford to lose today. How could he lose? "Do you know who you are?" A voice rang out in Qin Wenyan's mind as a smile appeared on his face. Who was he? He was Qin Wenyan. He stepped onto the final step, experiencing what Yun Mingyi had experienced. He allowed the boundless ancient will to seep into his body as he stood there with a smile on his face, staring up at the heavenly steel. "Your will can't destroy my body. Your will can't extinguish my will. Your will can't move my heart." Qin Wenyan stared at the heavenly steel as he continued, "I am Qin Wenyan. My fate is akin to a demon's." Chapter 333. I am Qin Wenyan. My life is akin to that of a demon. Qin Wenyan stood below the heavenly steel as he softly murmured. However, his voice was filled with determination. The life of a demon was incomparably tough. Powerful ancient demons, as long as they still had a single breath left in them, they wouldn't die. Qin Wenyan had only experienced a short period of time in his life, yet his life was as tough as a demon's. He would always be able to escape death. Today, leaving aside the fact that he had to fight against Siddhapa, how could he lose to the heavenly steel's ancient will? This ancient will wouldn't be able to kill him. The heavenly steel steps, 27th step, reached the top. The spectators below stared up at the sky as great waves of shock rocked their hearts. Siddhapa, who was the first to step up, was still hesitating. Yun Mingyi, who had unparalleled talent, was forcefully smashed down, sustaining heavy injuries. However, Qin Wenyan, who was the last to step up, carried an incomparably strong will as he stood at the end of the heavenly steel steps. He stood there, as though he could touch the heavenly steel with his bare hands. How can this be? Yu Bingyin couldn't believe her eyes. Qin Wenyan actually managed to stand firm. He stood right below the heavenly steel, basking in the astral light, allowing the energy to flow through his body, yet he remained unmoved. Xian Yan, Xian Exen, Li Shiyu and the rest all inclined their heads, staring at this inconceivable scene. This was a feat that no one had ever accomplished before. Today, had Qin Wenyan accomplished it? Xian Yan had personally experienced the might of the 19th step. She knew how terrifying that place was. And Qin Wenyan was on the 27th step. She had no way to imagine how terrifying that place would be. However, Qin Wenyan had accomplished it. Is the will of humans innately born, or is it tempered later on? Xian Yan mumbled in a low voice, as though she was asking herself. She didn't know she was born in a great clan, had outstanding talent, and was the pearl of the clan. After that, she entered the Mystic Maiden Palace to cultivate and experienced many things. With her outstanding talent, she didn't lack cultivation resources, yet the Mystic Maiden Palace still sent her on dangerous missions, forcing her to compete with other outstanding geniuses. She was able to stand out from the rest and become the princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace. Not only because of her talent, she also had a tenacious heart. But why was there still such a gap between her and Qin Wenyan? She couldn't help but wonder if cultivating in a powerful family or sect was really better than cultivating alone. As for Qin Wenyan, he didn't seem to know which sect he belonged to. It should be the day after tomorrow. Xian Xian mumbled. A person's innate talent might be determined by one's innate talent, but one's achievements were not determined by one's innate talent. Whether one's will was strong or not, it had nothing to do with innate talent. Yun Mingyi sat cross-legged on the ground, her body heavily injured. Initially, she was closing her eyes to meditate, but at this moment, she opened her eyes. Within her beautiful eyes, a hint of a smile could be seen. However, this smile of hers, no one could understand the meaning behind it. Ouyang Guangxing, Fan Lu, Chu Mang and the rest were all stunned, but naturally, they were also filled with joy. Qin Wenyin had already reached the end of the heavenly steel steps. Would Situpa dare to take that final step? Situpa stared at Qin Wenyin, his heart wavering. He was the third person in this generation to have the authority to cultivate the 36 mountains. Before him, there was Yun Mingyi, and now there was Qin Wenyin. Both of them had already taken that final step. How could he, Situpa, not dare to? Qin Wenyin stood there calmly, but from Yun Mingyi's reaction, one could tell that Qin Wenyin wasn't as simple as he appeared to be. To him right now, no one knew what he was experiencing. If he took that final step, he might end up like Qin Wenyin, enduring a myriad of pain. As long as his heart didn't waver, he would be able to endure it. But there was also the possibility that he would end up like Yun Mingyi, being blasted down the steps with heavy injuries. Naturally, there was also another possibility. If his heart was too weak, he might even die on the spot. If I don't take that final step, I won't be able to rest easy. Situpa was also a rare genius. He questioned his own heart. He wanted to overcome his fear, to overcome his desire to retreat. He wanted to strengthen his will, to strengthen his will, to strengthen his stubbornness once more. In fact, in today's battle, both he and Qin Wenyin had already obtained great benefits. He stepped into the 9th level of Yuan Fu, with all 3 of his mandates at the perfection boundary. As for Qin Wenyin, since he could break through to the 18th level, it was obvious that his mandate had undergone a transformation. Not only that, his state of heart had also undergone a transformation. Powerful opponents would sometimes destroy their opponents, but at the same time, they could also mutually benefit each other. In this battle, he and Qin Wenyin were mutually benefiting each other. Without Qin Wenyin, without Yun Mingyi, he wouldn't have been able to allow his heart to become so resolute, allowing him to walk all the way here. Similarly, without him, whether Qin Wenyin could ascend to the 19th level or not was a variable. If he stopped at the 18th level, maybe, when Qin Wenyin ascended to the 19th level, Qin Wenyin would have already lost his will. Just like Fan Lu, he wholeheartedly fought against Xian Yan, for the sake of Xian Xing. Xian Yan stopped at the 18th level, but he gave it his all and ascended to the 19th level, sustaining heavy injuries. However, was that really his limit? Could he break through that limit? Since he was already there, why couldn't he stand firm? Because Xian Yan had admitted defeat. And after that, Fan Lu was blasted down from the 19th level. Finally, Situpa took the final step. But only at the instant he took the final step did he understand what Yun Mingyi had experienced. In just an instant, Situpa was blasted down, his entire body dyed red with blood. His heart pounded madly, almost exploding to death. Why don't you ask, when your heart is about to shatter, when your will is severed, can your heart really remain unmoved? Situpa was blasted down, lying on the ground. Yu Bingying instantly rushed to his side, supporting his body. However, she only saw Situpa grabbing onto Yu Bingying's arm as he sat up. Although his entire body was dyed red with blood, his gaze was still fixed on Qin Wenyin. How did he do it? In the past 10 years, the heavenly steel steps have been opened 3 times, making it much more convenient for the people of the Azure continent. However, even for those outstanding geniuses who had the opportunity to ascend the heavenly steel steps, they might not be able to achieve what I did. How many people can achieve this? Situpa stared at the back view of Qin Wenyin. At this moment, a complicated expression flickered in his eyes. I've lost, Situpa mumbled in a low voice. You didn't, it's just a momentary lapse in thought. This doesn't count for anything, Yu Bingying consoled. A loss is a loss. This isn't a momentary lapse in thought. Even if I was given another chance, I still wouldn't be able to do it, Situpa replied in a low voice. This was the first time in his life that he had been defeated. Yu Bingying's heart pounded violently. She inclined her head, staring at Qin Wenyin. He was still standing at the foot of the heavenly steel steps. Situpa had been defeated by him. Before this, Yu Bingying wanted to meet him when she heard that his talent wasn't weak. At that time, she didn't care too much about him. But today, he had defeated her pride, Situpa. This was the first time Yu Bingying heard the word defeat coming out of Situpa's mouth. Situpa, it's just a single defeat. Based on your talent, don't let it affect your state of heart. Yu Bingying stared at Situpa, worried that his will would suffer a blow. Don't worry, my heart is resolute. Situpa stared at Qin Wenyan as a cold light flashed in his eyes. This person's will is even more terrifying than mine. It doesn't matter if he's expelled from the unmatched realm or not. What's important is that he must die. Situpa spoke in a low voice, his countenance resolute, as an intense killing intent flickered in his eyes. After this battle, he truly admired Qin Wenyan. However, this didn't affect his determination to kill Qin Wenyan in the slightest. In fact, his determination only grew stronger. Qin Wenyan had to die. But that old man... Yu Bingying spoke in a low voice. Qin Wenyan stood at the highest point of the heavenly steel steps. This battle was decided by that old man. If she wanted to kill Qin Wenyan now, that old man would definitely participate. I know, I'll recuperate first, Situpa replied. After which, he closed his eyes and focused on recuperating. Although defeat was a blow to him, it didn't affect his heart at all. He had already ascended to the 26th level, and was only a single step away from the top. There was nothing for him to regret, nor would there be any demons in his heart. Not only that, if he thought on the bright side, his strength had also risen by leaps and bounds. Wasn't that a good thing? As long as Qin Wenyan died, everything would come to a perfect end. As for his tarnished reputation, he still had a chance to redeem it. The trip to Ginku, the ranking battle of the heavenly fate rankings. At that time, who would dare to doubt him? Situpa? He would definitely be ranked on the heavenly fate rankings. As for the current Qin Wenyan, what he was experiencing right now was far more complicated than what the spectators had imagined. At this moment, his will had actually entered the heavenly steel. The ancient will of the heavenly steel. The heavenly steel has its own will? Qin Wenyan's heart trembled. At this moment, in front of his eyes, there was a majestic ancient kingdom, exuding a majestic aura. What made Qin Wenyan even more shocked was that he felt a sense of déjà vu. Back then, when I was in the tiny astral being, I saw my old fogey father bringing away a maiden from the ancient kingdom. Seems like this is the place. Qin Wenyan recalled the scene from a few years ago. It was as though he was replying to that scene. Abruptly, his body violently trembled. That beautiful maiden, it seemed to be her. As he thought of this, great waves of shock rocked Qin Wenyan's heart. How could this be? What was going on exactly? Gazing ahead, this ancient kingdom was even more resplendent than what he remembered. Atop the jade steps, a silhouette wielding a long sword could be seen. That silhouette stood there, her long hair fluttering in the wind, exuding an unexcelled aura. This was a woman so beautiful that it dazzled the hearts of others. Just by standing there, she seemed to be able to stun the heavens. On top of the stairs, an army of 9 people stood in the lead. These 9 people all exuded an inconceivably powerful aura, yet when they stared at the maiden in front of them, a hint of admiration could be seen in their eyes. Princess Tianyu, the ancient kingdom has already been destroyed. Grand Xia has been split into 9 parts. Don't resist anymore. One of the 9 people slowly spoke, his eyes filled with unmasked greed as he stared at Princess Tianyu. If Qin Wenyan had read the ancient records regarding the disappearance of Grand Xia, he would know that Princess Tianyu was the last princess of Grand Xia. She was also the most outstanding character in the history of Grand Xia. No one could compare to her. With regards to Princess Tianyu's ending, there were many rumors circulating in Grand Xia. However, the majority of the rumors were of a tragic ending. Princess Tianyu was a peerless beauty, as well as her shocking talent. How could she not be humiliated when she fell into the hands of those people? Every time those who read about the history of Grand Xia read about the story of Princess Tianyu, they would involuntarily feel pain in their hearts. But today, Qin Wenyin had actually personally witnessed this scene in the heavenly steel. Chapter 334. Although Qin Wenyin didn't know much about the destruction of the Great Xia Empire thousands of years ago, he had heard of it. In the past, the Great Xia Empire didn't have 9 cities, and there weren't so many overlord-level forces. The Grand Xia Empire unified the entire world. Countless experts were under the control of the Grand Xia Empire. Once upon a time, Grand Xia was unfathomably powerful, nobody could stand against it. After that, Grand Xia was divided into 9 parts, resulting in the 9 continents. After that, the various transcendent powers started to rise, dividing Grand Xia among themselves. As for the ancient dynasty of today, it was no longer the ancient dynasty of the past. Many years ago, when Great Xia was divided into 9 parts, it marked the end of the ancient dynasty. Now, it was rumored that only one branch of the ancient dynasty was left. As for whether the rumors were true or false, it had yet to be verified. Therefore, when Qin Wenyin saw the scene in front of him, his heart could not help but tremble slightly. What kind of treasure is this heavenly monument? It actually recorded the destruction of the ancient dynasty. Does this mean that this heavenly monument is a relic of the ancient dynasty? Qin Wenyin thought. As it turned out, the heavenly steel platform that had been in the Azure continent for so many years actually had a secret. When did this heavenly steel hall appear in Azure Continent City? Many doubts surfaced in his mind, but at this moment, Qin Wenyin was still watching the scene in front of him. A terrifying aura erupted from Princess Tianyu's body, and there seemed to be a true dragon coiling around her sword. Princess Tianyu, do you want to destroy Grand Xia completely? A cold voice rang out from that person's mouth, causing despair to fill Princess Tianyu's eyes. That person walked in front of Princess Tianyu, staring at her beauty as he greedily spoke. Princess, do you know that we've admired you for a very long time? Princess Tianyu's face was pale. She bit her lips and her expression was extremely cold. Are you willing to leave behind descendants for us? They will inherit our position. They will be the only remaining descendants of the emperor's bloodline in Grand Xia. The middle-aged man looked at Princess Tianyu and said in a loud voice. Princess Tianyu's face turned even paler, and the hand holding the sword trembled. Did she want to preserve the bloodline of Grand Xia? These people wanted to sully her. If you agree, put down the sword in your hand. Princess Tianyu's body trembled. She was in incomparable pain. Her heart felt like it was being tormented in purgatory. She was not reconciled. If the thief did not die, she could not die. With a soft sound, the sword fell to the ground. A sinister smile appeared on the face of the middle-aged man. After which he slowly walked forwards, his hands caressing Princess Tianyu's skin. How greedy was he? He was finally going to obtain this woman who had stunned the entire Grand Xia. With a wave of his hand, everyone except for the 9 of them left. The middle-aged man's hand brushed past Princess Tianyu's robes. Gradually, her robes fell off, revealing her flawless, jade-like skin. Her perfect body appeared before his eyes. Xia Tianyu, you're so beautiful. The sinister light in the middle-aged man's eyes burned brightly as his hands caressed every inch of her beautiful body. Princess Tianyu's tears slowly flowed down her cheeks, but her heart was incomparably resolute. She swore that even if it took 1,000 years or 10,000 years, she would take revenge. Destroy the divine steel and split it into 9. Each of us will get one. The middle-aged man spoke in a low voice. The 8 of them turned and faced the divine steel outside the ancient palace of Grand Xia. From now on, the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia shall be the sole hegemon of our 9 branches. Although the divine steel cannot be destroyed, the 9 of us shall never meet again, and the divine steel shall never be restored. That man greedily bit down on Princess Tianyu's skin, hugging her perfect body as he walked out of the palace. After which, rumbling sounds rang out as the other 8 attacked the divine steel. This was the final scene, and it had an extremely great impact on Qin Wenyin. He could already guess a few things. Firstly, The scene before his eyes was the final scene of the divine steel. This meant that the three-sided divine steel above his head was none other than the original divine steel that had been split into 9. However, 3 of the 9 sides had been collected here. Secondly, the 9 prefectures of Grand Xia must have originated from this. How pitiful Princess Tianyu was to suffer such humiliation. As for what happened to her afterwards, it was still a mystery. As for the middle-aged man's words, after the divine steel was destroyed, the 9 ultimate arts would be the sole hegemon of Grand Xia. Could this mean that the 9 of them had cultivated the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, and these 9 ultimate arts were all contained within the divine steel? They wanted the 9 pieces of the divine steel to never meet again, never to be reunited. Ooh! Retracting his will, Qin Wenyin drew in a deep breath as a mysterious pressure bore down on him. Qin Wentian's heart stirred as the Yellow Springs monument appeared, hovering in the air as a heart-palpitating aura of blood gushed forth. Can your body of flesh and blood withstand the force of your attack? Qin Wenyin recalled the ancient will of the heavenly steel. That was an attack of pure force, followed by an attack of the will of mandates. As for the Yellow Springs monument, it was an attack of the power of blood. However, he was the one controlling the Yellow Springs monument. Hence, the power it could unleash wasn't strong enough. The Yellow Springs monument was obtained by the Azure Emperor and was later controlled by Fairy Qing. She placed it on the refinement grounds of the immortal soul, setting up the ancient pathway of the Yellow Springs. This was also a test of one's talent and will. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. The Yellow Springs monument that the Azure Emperor had obtained was also a fragment of the divine steel. However, there were still clouds of unanswered questions. Could it be that the 9 meridians no longer existed? There were 3 pieces of the divine steel here, but why didn't anyone come to snatch them away? Could it be that the owner of the heavenly steel was so powerful? Not only that, after the divine steel was separated, it was clear that it could be controlled by a person. Just like how he could control the Yellow Springs monument to unleash immense power. In that case, were the ancient wills within the 3 heavenly steels really the original will of the heavenly steel? Or was it controlled by someone else? Naturally, the most important question was, what did all of this have to do with him? He wasn't even 20 yet, and his old fogey father must have died after he was born. It was impossible for him to be someone from a few thousand years ago. Why was it that he was the one who ended up here, in front of the heavenly steel? Could it be that everything was just a coincidence? This was impossible, because the maiden that his old fogey father brought away from Grand Xia was extremely similar to a certain person, Yun Mengyi. Forget it, it would be too wasteful if I don't cultivate properly. Qin Wenyin had no way to unravel the mystery in his heart. He could only discard all distracting thoughts and close his eyes to cultivate. Luckily, the ancient will of the heavenly steel had weakened, or else he would have died without a doubt. However, this also confirmed his suspicions that someone was controlling the heavenly steel. After a period of time, Qin Wenyin tossed aside all distracting thoughts and focused on his cultivation. After experiencing a baptism of his state of heart, this was the most suitable time for him to break through to the next level. Situpa had broken through under such conditions, and he could do the same as well. The ancient will of the heavenly steel has weakened. Below, Fan Lu and the rest felt their hearts trembling. What's going on? Ouyang Guangxing had a puzzled expression on his face. Situpa also didn't understand, but he was still recovering from his injuries and didn't have the time to think too much about it. However, at this moment, Yun Mingyi's beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at the silhouette atop the heavenly steel steps. You've lost. A voice abruptly drifted into Yun Mingyi's ears. Nobody noticed it, only Yun Mingyi had heard it. Yun Mingyi nodded her head lightly. She knew that she had lost. Today, she naturally didn't come here to help Qin Wenyin. She was the same as Situpa, she came here to spar with Qin Wenyin. However, she had lost. She didn't manage to ascend to the highest level and obtain the divine steel that belonged to her. Since you've lost, from now onwards, you should be loyal to him. You won't disgrace yourself. For this trip to Grand Xia, accompany him. You are more familiar with that place than him. That voice drifted over once more. Yun Mingyi inclined her head, staring at Qin Wenyin. Maybe this was her destiny. This time around, Qin Wenyin only used a month to break through the bottleneck of the 6th level of Yuanfu, stepping into the 7th level of Yuanfu. Not only him, but those who had ascended the heavenly steel steps had also improved, especially those who had ascended to the 18th step. All of them had experienced a sublimation of their martial wills, a transformation of their mental state, and their strength had clearly improved. Currently, Chu Mang had stepped into the 8th level of Yuanfu, while Ouyang Guangxing and Fan Le had both broken through to the 7th level. In fact, Ouyang Guangxing was already preparing to break through to the 8th level. Not only that, their mandates had also undergone a qualitative transformation. Yun Mingyi was someone who couldn't be underestimated. This time around, her mandates had already reached the perfection boundary. Right now, her cultivation base was at the 9th level of Yuanfu, with all 3 of her mandates at the perfection boundary. Naturally, the ones with the greatest improvements were still Situ Pe and Qin Wenyin. Situ Pe at the 9th level of Yuanfu with 3 mandates at the perfection boundary. Qin Wenyin at the 7th level of Yuanfu with 3 mandates at the perfection boundary. His will was incomparably tough, and his state of heart was unshakable. Those who had left felt extremely depressed in their hearts. They didn't even get to see the battle between the 3 of them. But then again, Qin Wenyin was truly amazing. He actually became the #1 contender, defeating Situ Pe. Sadly, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was too low, and there wasn't much time left until the end of the year. It would be impossible for him to ascend to the heavenly fate rankings at the end of the year. Naturally, Qin Wentian didn't think this way. At this moment, he stopped his cultivation and stood up with a confident smile on his face. If it weren't for this tempering exercise, it would have been extremely difficult for him to improve so much in the short span of a few months. Indeed, this was a very good opportunity for him. Many thanks, Senior. Qin Wenyin clasped his hands to the old man beside him as he politely thanked him. You did it yourself, there's no need to thank me, the old man casually replied. Qin Wenyin smiled. He guessed that this old man must be an extraordinary character. Junior bids my farewell. Qin Wenyin bowed as he prepared to depart. This heavenly steel is yours now, take it away, the old man casually stated, his words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to flicker. This heavenly steel was the divine steel, yet this old man was actually giving it to him? Back then, my master told me that the heavenly steel would belong to whoever could reach the bottom of the heavenly steel. And you've done it. Take it away, the old man impatiently stated. Qin Wenyin no longer stood on ceremony. He kept the Yellow Springs monument and the heavenly steel. However, the mystery in his heart grew even stronger. He wanted to unravel it, but sadly he couldn't. Lifting his feet, Qin Wenyin walked down the stairs. The old man held onto his broom as he stared up at the sky. A hint of gentleness could be seen in his eyes, as though he was still thinking of Qin Wenyin. In the ancient capital of Gingku, the Venerate Heavens sect. It was unknown how many years ago, the Venerate Heavens sect was once known as the Venerate Heavenly Supervisor. It was a department under the control of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. At this moment, in the Venerate Heavens sect, an old man stared up at the sky. His eyes shone with the resplendent light, piercing through the void, staring at the constellation of Grand Xia. The demon constellation is getting brighter and brighter. The constellation of Grand Xia is filled with the power of the wind and clouds. The constellation of Grand Xia shone resplendently, each contending with their own sharpness. However, within this constellation, there's actually a unifying force. The old man's heart trembled. This constellation was something rarely seen in 1,000 years. Chapter 335. The spectators watched as Qin Wenyin walked down the steps, their hearts trembling. Without the heavenly steel platform, could it still be called the heavenly steel platform? The heavenly steel was actually given to Qin Wenyin. Naturally, the people here had no idea what these 3 heavenly steels were. If not, a terrifying storm would surely erupt. The divine steel, in its name, bore witness to the rise and fall of ancient Grand Xia. Once, countless heroes of ancient Grand Xia had been baptized by it. The divine steel was like an ancient mirror, a scroll of history. On it, the 9 ultimate arts of ancient Grand Xia were inscribed. But now, the 9 ultimate arts had split into 9, no longer intersecting with each other. If Qin Wenyan had a deeper understanding of the history of ancient Grand Xia, he would have known that there were some transcendent powers in the Grand Xia Empire whose ultimate arts were none other than the 9 ultimate arts inscribed on the divine steel of ancient Grand Xia. However, although they were still powerful, they no longer had the glory of the past. The ancient Grand Xia of the past was many times stronger compared to the current ancient Grand Xia. One could say that even if all the transcendent powers in the 9 continents joined forces, they still wouldn't be as strong as the ancient Grand Xia of the past. If not, how could the ancient Grand Xia have been able to unify the world? Behind Qin Wenyan, the old man was sweeping the stairs once more. Maybe this would be the last time he would sweep the stairs. "Boss, can you lend me the heavenly steel to play with for 2 days?" Fan Lin narrowed his eyes as he watched Qin Wenyan walk over. That powerful heavenly steel actually became Qin Wentian's possession. How interesting. Qin Wenyan glared at Fan Lu as he walked to the side of Chu Mang and the rest. Glancing at them, he could see that their strength had all improved. This trip to the heavenly steel steps had been extremely fruitful. Shifting his gaze over, Qin Wenyan glanced at Sidupa, Yu Bingying and the rest. Sidupa was also looking at him as he calmly stated, "Let's meet again in Ginkgo." As the sound of his voice faded, he left with Yu Bingying. Looking into his eyes, Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a cold light. Sidupo's killing intent was still as strong as ever. "In that case, let's meet again in Ginkgo." Most likely, the people here would all be heading to Ginkgo soon. It wasn't too long until the end of the year. "Xianexen, let's go back." Those from the Mystic Maiden Palace also prepared to depart. Xianexen's beautiful eyes turned to Fan Lu as she smiled. "Will you be heading to Ginkgo?" "Right." Fan Lu nodded his head. "In that case, let's meet again in the Ginkgo continent." Xianexen smiled sweetly. After that, she left with Xian Yen and the others from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Fan Lu laughed in a silly manner as he scratched his head. Qin Wenyan couldn't help but perspire in his heart when he saw this scene. Spring had arrived for Fatty, he had turned silly. Not far away, that white-robed figure was also preparing to depart, only to hear Qin Wenyan calling out, "Yun Mengyi." Yun Mengyi halted her steps. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, appearing beside her as he spoke, "I have something to ask you." After speaking, he pulled on Yun Mengyi's arm and led her away. Maybe Yun Mengyi knew some of the mysteries in his heart. Yun Mengyi furrowed her brows, but when she thought of that person, she relaxed and allowed Qin Wenyan to pull her away. This scene caused both Ouyang Quangxing and Fan Lu to be taken aback. Too ferocious. Very ferocious. Ouyang Quangxing nodded his head. Yun Mengyi was as cold as ice. Qin Wenyan actually dragged her away to be alone? Qin Wenyan walked together with Yun Mengyi as he asked, "Who are you?" Yun Mengyi stared at him as she replied in a cold voice, "Yun Mengyi. You already knew who I was the moment I stepped into the unmatched realm?" Qin Wenyan stared into Yun Mengyi's eyes. Yun Mengyi flung his hand away as she replied, "I'm Xia Tianyu." Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened as he stared fixedly at her. "Impossible. You don't believe me?" Yun Mengyi stared at Qin Wenyan as a strange smile flickered in her eyes. "Do you believe that I'm your elder sister?" Qin Wenyan didn't reply. The current Yun Mengyi gave him a strange feeling. That smile of hers was extremely foreign. Her words had no credibility at all. Only she herself would know whether she was telling the truth or not. "I don't believe you," Qin Wenyan replied. "Since that's the case, why do you still need to ask me? After you arrive at Ginkgo, I will look for you." After speaking, Yun Mengyi slowly walked away. The aura she exuded was still as cold as ever. Nobody could guess what she was thinking. "Who?" Qin Wenyan exhaled. He still couldn't see through her. Back then, the person his old fogey father brought out from Grand Xia, was it Yun Mengyi? What was the relationship between Yun Mengyi and Xia Tianyu? Why did the divine steel end up in his hands? Was it really because he walked in front of the heavenly steel and obtained the recognition of that old man? That old man himself was a terrifying character. If not, he wouldn't have been able to withstand the pressure from the divine steel. And now, he said that he was obeying the orders of his master. What sort of character was his master? What's wrong? Ouyang Guangxing and the rest walked over when they saw Qin Wenyan standing there in a daze. Little Rascal also leapt into Qin Wentian's embrace, rubbing its head against his chest. Nothing. Qin Wenyan shook his head. Even he himself wasn't clear about his origins. There was no point in explaining it. He didn't know if this trip to the ancient kingdom would be able to unravel the mystery behind it. We're almost there. It's about time for us to head to Ginkgo. I'm afraid that those from the Azure continent will also be heading there soon. Ginkgo is now bustling with activity. Ouyang Guangxing laughed, his heart filled with anticipation. Who knew how many geniuses would be gathered for this trip to the ancient capital once every 3 years? It's about time. There's only a few more months left. Qin Wenyan felt a sense of urgency in his heart. Although his strength had improved tremendously in this year, it was still impossible for him to become one of the top 3 rankers of the Heavenly Fate rankings. The top 3 rankers were the strongest among the countless peak Yuanfu cultivators. Their mandates had already reached the perfection boundary, and their innate techniques and cultivation arts were all top-notch as well. Not only that, there might even be some who had comprehended a second-level mandate. Let's make a trip back to the Ouyang aristocrat clan first. I'm afraid there will be many from the Ouyang aristocrat clan heading there. Ouyang Guangxing spoke. Qin Wenyan naturally didn't have any objections, and accompanied Ouyang Guangxing back to the Ouyang aristocrat clan. After Ouyang Guangxing reported the situation to his superiors, the Ouyang aristocrat clan issued an order. 7 days later, those who had the qualifications to participate in the ranking battle of the Heavenly Fate rankings would all be sent to Ginkgo. At this moment, in Ouyang Guangxing's residence, a 3-sided heavenly steel floated in the air. Qin Wenyan, Fan Lu, Chu Mang and Ouyang Guangxing were all below the heavenly steel, sensing the ancient will within. Force, use my strength to attack my body. Qin Wentian's body rushed towards the heavenly steel in the air. Currently, he could already confirm that the 3-sided heavenly steel contained an ancient will and could unleash and retract its attacks as he wished. Just a little bit more, I can still withstand even more force. Qin Wenyan took a step forward in the air, as thunderous rumbling sounds echoed out. The terrifying force blasted against his body, causing him to spit out fresh blood. Yet in his eyes, a resolute determination could be seen. With the presence of the 3-sided heavenly steel, how could they waste any more time? They could feel the pressure and break through their limits. Back then, the divine steel was used to baptize the members of the royal clan of Grand Xia. But now, it was being used by Qin Wenyan to break through his limits. Ouyang Guangxing, Fan Lu and the rest were all immersed in the torment of the divine steel. Although the pain was excruciating, they could feel their strength and willpower changing little by little. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. Today, the members of the Ouyang aristocrat clan gathered in the vast Dao cultivation grounds. Over here, there were powerful ancient demonic mounts escorting them as they headed towards Ginkgo. Qin Wenyan swept his gaze over the crowd. In the vast Dao cultivation grounds, there were at least a few hundred people with a cultivation base at the 9th level of Yuanfu. The number of people in an aristocratic family was innumerable, and there would be no lack of people of any cultivation realm. Of course, the majority of these several hundred people were probably cannon fodder, but one could imagine how many people would descend on Ginkgo this time around. Let's move out. The clan lord of the Ouyang aristocrat clan personally came to send them off. Although the Yuanfu realm was only the strength of the younger generations of an aristocrat clan, those who had undergone the baptism and performed outstandingly would all become the core members of their clan in the future. In the airspace above the Ouyang aristocrat clan, demonic qi towered up into the skies as the ancient demonic beasts soared through the air, flying towards the central region of Grand Xia. In the 9 continents of Grand Xia, Ginku, Moon Continent and War Continent were the three ancient cities that formed a triangular formation located in the central region of Grand Xia. Among them, Ginku was the most powerful. It was the true central region of Grand Xia. Even the countries surrounding Ginku were extremely powerful, with experts as common as the clouds. Although the ancient kingdom was destroyed, the ancient capital was still the most flourishing city in the 9 continents. This city had witnessed the rise and fall of Grand Xia's history. In Ginku, the demonic beasts howled unceasingly as experts soared through the air. It was as though there was no end to their numbers. These experts were either alone or in groups of 3 to 5, chatting freely in the air as they stared at the ancient city, their hearts surging with passion. And as for those below, when they stared at the skies, their hearts were similarly stirred. At this moment, in the air, a group of sword cultivators could be seen soaring through the skies. They were all clad in white, resembling supreme sword immortals, exuding an awe-inspiring aura. Those should be the swallow swordsmen. They're all sword cultivators from the Yen continent. Their robes are clean and simple. There are so many demonic beasts over there. Are they from the transcendent powers of the demon continent? Is it the Sky Demon sect or the Beast King Hall? Who are those people? What a powerful formation. They're definitely from a transcendent power. The gazes of those in the crowd turned to a certain direction, where many people could be seen, only to see a silhouette standing there proudly, as though he could be found in the crowd with a single glance. That's Hua Taishu. I've seen him before. He's the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings, Hua Taishu. But now that he's already broken through to Heavenly Dipper, he shouldn't be participating in the ranking battle this time around. But even so, he's still a legend. Yeah, those from the Hua clan have arrived. That transcendent power beside them should also be from the Moon continent. With such an imposing manner, other than the Pill Emperor Hall, there shouldn't be any other. Many in the crowd sighed in admiration. They searched the Pill Emperor Hall, and soon after, they saw a few outstanding characters. That young man with golden eyes, I think he's Zhang Chen. I heard that he cultivated an ascendance cultivation art, causing his strength to increase to an incomparably terrifying level. There's even a rumor that he intentionally suppressed his cultivation base, all for the sake of becoming the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings, causing his name to shake the entire Grand Xia. Who's that young woman? What a beauty! Her beauty can topple empires. That woman is none other than the daughter of the Pill Emperor, Mo Qingqing, the disciple of Luo He. She's very low profile, and very few people know of her. But in the Moon continent, her name can shake the heavens. Countless voices filled the skies of the Ginku continent. In the ancient capital of Grand Xia, where the elites of the 9 continents gathered, there were naturally countless topics to talk about. Chapter 336. In the Ginku continent, the various inns and restaurants were bustling with activity. These days, there were simply too many customers. Not only did the major powers of Grand Xia arrive, even the major characters of the Grand Xia Empire wanted to take a look at this banquet. At this moment, on the streets of the Ginku continent, a few silhouettes could be seen strolling about. Among them were 2 young maidens, both extremely beautiful and exceptionally eye-catching. However, the person behind them exuded a cold and gloomy aura, causing others to not dare to approach him. But strangely, the person in the middle of the 2 maidens was actually an ordinary-looking old man. His aura was extremely weak, as though he was an ordinary mortal. The Ginku continent is truly flourishing. The old man stared at the towering buildings in his surroundings, as a myriad of emotions surfaced in his heart. He couldn't help but feel somewhat amused as he thought back to the matters he was so stubborn about in the past. Chu, Sky Harmony City, in the face of the vastness of the 9 continents, was as insignificant as an ant. The people here, even those who casually strolled about on the streets, were all existences he had once regarded as lofty existences. His horizons had changed, and his heart had also changed. Autumn Snow, you have to work hard and learn from your younger sister. This world is truly too vast. Bai Qingsong sighed. Autumn Snow nodded her head, And father, I will work hard. But if I want to catch up to my younger sister, I'm afraid it's impossible. Elder sister, you have to have more confidence in yourself. The beautiful lady beside Autumn Snow laughed. This lady had a tall and slender figure, even taller than Autumn Snow. Her figure was extremely well proportioned, and her skin was as white as snow. She was an extremely beautiful lady, and yet, her eyes gave off a depth that didn't match her age. It was as though she had experienced many things. This young maiden was Autumn Snow's younger sister, Bai Qing. Currently, her status in the Mystic Moon Hall was extraordinary, and she had brought her family over to the Mystic Moon Hall. Confidence? Autumn Snow lightly shook her head. I wonder if he will come to Grand Xia. Thinking of him, a faint smile appeared on Autumn Snow's younger sister's face. After experiencing so many things, she had long since let go of everything. She also felt regret for what she had done in the past. Not only her father Bai Qingsong had also let go of everything and didn't blame Qin Wenyan for crippling him. And because of this, Bai Qing was able to reunite with her parents, and their family was reunited. Bai Qingsong was stunned for a moment. Then, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. Sometimes, I really want to go back to the past. If I didn't do those things for my own selfish reasons, perhaps you and him would also be an enviable couple. Okay, it's all in the past. You guys don't have to bring it up. Bai Qing interjected, causing Bai Qingsong to smile and shake his head. Let's not talk about it, it's all in the past. Bai Qing's gaze was fixed on the horizon as she mused in her heart. Back then during the refinement grounds at the Celestial Lake, Wenyan Gij had already broken through to Yuanfu. Now, after such a long time, her cultivation base had already reached the 8th level of Yuanfu. Although it was due to her own hard work and experience, Wenyan Gij was more outstanding than her. He shouldn't be weaker than her, right? As she thought of this, a faint smile flickered in Bai Qing's eyes. At this moment, she exuded an innocent beauty. On the main road, Qin Wenyan sneezed and whispered, "Who's thinking of me?" "Don't be so smug, boss." Fan Li's lips twitched. "Do you think I'm the one? There's always someone thinking of me." Qin Wenyan rolled his eyes. Little rascal in his embrace also flipped its body, as though it couldn't bear it anymore. This caused Fan Li to smack it lightly on its little head. They arrived at Ginku yesterday, and early in the morning, Fatty suggested that they go out for a stroll. There were many inns in this area, and the main road they were on was exceedingly wide, able to accommodate over 100 people walking side by side. Demonic beasts constantly flitted past them, and shops could be seen on both sides of the road. Occasionally, on the main road, they would encounter groups of people with extraordinary auras. The majority of these people were from major powers, and were filled with confidence. Who are these people? They all exude an aura of sharpness, akin to unsheathed swords. Qin Wenyan glanced at the silhouettes of a group of youths as he asked Ouyang Quangxing. People from the War Continent. There are many transcendent powers in the War Continent that are proficient in weaponsmithing. The innate techniques and cultivation arts they cultivate are all complemented by divine weapons. Hence, their aura is extremely sharp. Ouyang Quangxing replied, not only that, the War Continent isn't too far away from Ginku. Together with Ginku and the Moon Continent, they are considered the most powerful of the 3 continents in Grand Xia. That's why I feel a sense of superiority. The 36 transcendent powers of the 9 continents should all be here, right? Qin Wenyan asked in a low voice. Ouyang Quangxing nodded his head. Naturally, the 9 Mystical Palace and Green Cloud Pavilion would also send their people over. You should be more familiar with those places. After all, Chu is the closest to the Qin continent. The 9 Mystical Palace couldn't be said to be familiar with them, but he had indeed interacted with them several times before. Now, if he were to meet people from the 9 Mystical Palace, there was something he had to clarify. As for the Green Cloud Pavilion, the only people he had interacted with were Senior Gong Hong and Chen Mingyu. Currently, he didn't know how Gong Hong was doing. Not long after Gong Hong left Chu, Qin Wenyan headed towards the Moon Continent. Even if Gong Hong returned to Chu in the future, he wouldn't be able to find Qin Wenyan. Chu. Qin Wenyan felt a trace of worry in his heart. Chu was a weak country, yet there were so many people he missed so much. Qingsheng from the Pill Emperor Hall. This time around she should be here as well. Qin Wenyan silently mused. Qingsheng was highly regarded by the Pill Emperor Hall, and was nurtured as a core disciple. Luo He was extremely fond of her, and Mo Qingsheng's strength definitely wouldn't be any slower than his. How fragrant! At this moment, a fragrant aroma drifted over. Fan Le took a deep breath as he narrowed his eyes, searching for the source of the fragrance. Over there. Chu Mang pointed to a luxurious inn in front of them. A banner could be seen fluttering in the wind, with a few words written on it. Drunken Immortal Lodge. Good name. Ouyang Guangxing laughed. Come, let's go and drink a few cups. Right, I want to drink a few cups as well. Beside Ouyang Guangxing, Ouyang Xiaolu blinked her eyes, causing Ouyang Guangxing to glare at her. This has nothing to do with you. Let's drink, women eat meat. Mph. Ouyang Xiaolu glared at Ouyang Guangxing. When I see elder sister Ting, I will get her to help me deal with you. The elder sister Ting that Ouyang Xiaolu was referring to wasn't Ouyang Ting, but rather Ouyang Guangxing's fiancée, Jiang Ting. As a descendant of a transcendent power in the Wind Continent, Jiang Ting would naturally come as well. Che, we still don't know who will be the one to deal with who. Ouyang Guangxing curled his lips. Really? Do you dare to say that again? Ouyang Xiaolu disdainfully retorted. If that last Jiang Ting is here, I will definitely teach her a good lesson. How about it? Ouyang Guangxing's voice rang out. As the sound of his voice faded, a smile appeared on Ouyang Xiaolu's face, causing Ouyang Guangxing to feel a sense of unease. Abruptly, he turned, only to see a beautiful silhouette standing behind him. Qin Wenyan and Fan Le didn't even need to turn their heads to know who was there. Their faces were filled with sympathy as they stared at Ouyang Guangxing. You guys? Ouyang Guangxing knew that he had been tricked. These fellows seemed to know everything. How disloyal. Ever since they parted at the Celestial Lake Palace, Qin Wenyan hadn't seen Jiang Ting again. Now that she had matured, her figure was slender and elegant, exuding an aura of femininity. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at Ouyang Guangxing, causing him to laugh heartily. Ting, you're here. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't this smelly lass tell me? Humph. Jiang Ting let Ouyang Guangxing hug empty air as she walked past him. Ouyang Guangxing trembled as he followed after her, laughing. I was only joking earlier, just joking. Seeing this scene, Qin Wenyan and the rest all laughed as they entered the Drunken Immortal Lodge. After which, they found a good table on the second floor by the window and sat down, chatting away as they drank. The inn was filled to the brim with guests, chatting about everything under the heavens. However, at this moment, no one knew that this unremarkable table of people would cause a tempest in Grand Xia in the future. Outside the Drunken Immortal Inn, there was a continuous stream of people entering. At this moment, a group of people entered. Among these people, there were 3 males and 3 females. Among the 3 females, one of them was slightly shorter and had an ordinary countenance, as though she had a sense of inferiority. She followed behind the group of people and didn't speak at all. The one who spoke the most had a hint of flirtatiousness to her. Her eyes scanned the surroundings, as though she was exceptionally intelligent. Not only that, she had a voluptuous figure, and her peaks were half exposed, causing people to drool over her. However, the most dazzling person was none other than the last female. She had an innate sexiness to her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a sense of charm, and her vermilion lips were slightly pursed. She didn't speak much, but her beauty was absolutely breathtaking. It was as though she was born with an innate charm, causing even women to be jealous of her. Yang Xia, don't worry. There will be a brother from my clan arriving soon. We will treat him to a meal and get him to put in a good word for us. It definitely wouldn't be a problem for us to enter the Pill Emperor Hall for cultivation. One of the young men stared at the half-exposed female, his eyes involuntarily staring at the snow-white ravine, as though he wanted to peek at the scenery within. How strong is this Pill Emperor Hall? Yang Xia was filled with anticipation. A transcendent power, the Pill Emperor Hall. In the Moon continent, there's a transcendent power, the Pill Emperor Hall. Who in the 9 continents wouldn't fear them? Hence, all the transcendent powers would have to seek help from the Pill Emperor Hall. Among the transcendent powers, the Pill Emperor Hall can be ranked within the top 3. The young man boasted, and as they spoke, they found a seat on the 2nd floor and sat down. That brother of mine is named Jingyu. His talent is outstanding and has already entered the tutelage of the daughter of the Pill Emperor, Luohi. When he arrives, all of you better speak to him properly. He's a genius of the Pill Emperor Hall, a true major character. The young man seriously spoke, his words causing a brilliant light to flash in Yang Xia's eyes. She pulled down her robes, revealing her snow-white ravine. This time, it was an opportunity for her. Her gaze inadvertently shifted onto the beautiful young woman beside her as a hint of jealousy flashed in her eyes. This woman was born with an innate charm, even more alluring than her. She was a threat to her. What did you say? Yang Xia stared at the beautiful young woman as she asked. Given the Pill Emperor Hall's power, it's only natural that they would be extremely strict. How can they rely on such methods to pass? The beautiful young woman laughed. While they were discussing about the Pill Emperor Hall, Qin Wentian's gaze instantly landed on the back of a young woman. Upon hearing her words, a radiant smile flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. Happiness and warmth. As though she had sensed something, the beautiful young woman turned around. An instant later, her body trembled violently as her beautiful eyes froze in place. Little rascal, it's been a few years since we last met. Chapter 337. When Qin Wenyan left Chu, the situation in Chu had already stabilized. Chu Wei governed the country, resolving the grudges between the various factions and assisting in the reconstruction of the Emperor's Star Academy. Although the power structure of the major clans had changed, it was merely a matter of prosperity and decline. This was something that was bound to happen. Luo Huan knew that there was no longer a need for her to remain in Chu. Hence, she decided to roam the continent alone, traveling to the west. She visited many countries, including the Qin continent. She knew that Chu was too small, and her strength was too weak. In addition, she was naturally seductive and had an innate charm, so it was easy for others to covet her beauty. Many times she had faced danger. Fortunately, she was an extremely intelligent person, and after interacting with various people, she was able to protect herself. However, she also knew the importance of powerful strength and background. She wanted to join a major power because she had experienced many things in these few years. Although her talent wasn't weak, it wasn't strong enough to dazzle the eyes of others. Only by joining a major power would she be able to protect herself better. After arriving at Ginkgo, she got to know a few more people and decided to travel together. Although the tone of these people was filled with boasting, she still chose to travel together with them, feigning civility. This was also a method to protect herself. Compared to traveling alone, it was much safer. As for the words of the other party, she had only heard it in passing. Although she wanted to join a major power, she had never thought of joining the Pill Emperor Hall. However, Luo Huan didn't expect that the words of the other party were half-truths. The Jingyu she knew was indeed a disciple of Luo He from the Pill Emperor Hall. He had once accompanied Luo He to Chu to fetch Mo Qingqing. Naturally, what caused Luo Huan to be pleasantly surprised was that she had actually met Qin Wenyan in the inn. The aura of this little fellow now was already vastly different from before. Luo Huan could still vaguely remember the time when she accompanied her teacher Mustang to the Sky Harmony City, and the first time they had met Qin Wenyan fleeing for his life. At this moment, as their gazes met, warm smiles could be seen on the faces of the two of them. Not only that, their relationship was already as close as that of a brother and sister. Meeting again after such a long time, there was warmth in their hearts. It was wonderful to see him again. Fan Lu also noticed the strange expression on Qin Wentian's face. Shifting his gaze over, his eyes instantly brightened. To think that he would actually see his senior sister Luo Huan here. Jingyu, you're here. At this moment, The young man seated at Luo Huan's table stood up and stared at the staircase, only to see a young man slowly walking up, startling the smiling Luo Huan. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flickered as a crafty glint flashed in her eyes. Did these fellows really find someone to impersonate someone from the Pill Emperor Hall? As she thought of this, she gestured for Qin Wendian and Fan Lu to keep quiet. After which, she blinked her eyes. Her every frown and every smile on her face was extremely pleasing to the eyes. Qin Wendian swept his gaze over to the staircase, and when he saw Jingyu, a strange expression involuntarily appeared on his face. Since Jingyu was already here, it meant that those from the Pill Emperor Hall shouldn't be too far away. It was very likely that Qingqing was in the vicinity. As he thought of this, Qin Wendian cooperated with Luo Huan's actions. Silently, he turned his head back and continued drinking his wine, as though he hadn't seen anything. Jingyu came together with a young man. This young man was clad in luxurious robes, and was extraordinarily handsome, exuding an aura of heroism. The instant Luo Huan saw the two of them, she couldn't help but have a strange expression on her face. These two exuded an extraordinary aura, and didn't seem to be swindlers at all. It was as though they truly had a deep foundation. Jingyu was clad in white, and his aura was slightly inferior. His brows were furrowed in worry, as though he had something weighing on his mind. As for the young man beside him, he was brimming with energy and vigor. This young man was someone from the Chen clan. In the Ginku continent, the Chen clan was one of the most ancient aristocratic clans in Grand Xia. In fact, there were even rumors that one of the 9 great clans that destroyed Grand Xia was the Chen clan. They were one of the 9 great clans that Grand Xia relied on the most. After the destruction of Grand Xia, the Chen clan lord established a new Chen clan in the Ginku continent. In the 9 continents of Grand Xia, there were 36 transcendent powers. If one were to rank them, the Chen clan would definitely be ranked within the top 3. The cultivation art of the Chen clan had the ability to borrow the power of the great solar sun, twisting the heavens and earth. The great solar universe art was rumored to be one of the ultimate arts of ancient Grand Xia. It possessed boundless might, and when one cultivated it, they would be able to incinerate the heavens and boil the seas. When the great solar universe art was unleashed, anyone who dared to approach it would die. From this, one could very well imagine how tyrannical this cultivation art was. Even in Grand Xia, it would be extremely difficult to find a cultivation art that could contend against it. The Pill Emperor Hall and the Chen clan had a connection, and after they arrived in Ginku, the Chen clan had personally welcomed the Pill Emperor Hall and the Hua clan into their residence. When Qin Ran first saw Mo Qingqing, he was momentarily stunned. Not only that, there were many rumors circulating about Mo Qingqing in the various transcendent powers, causing Qin Ran to feel a strong urge to pursue her. However, he also knew that there were many competitors, and the strongest among them were Hua Taishu and Zhan Qin. However, when he heard that Mo Qingqing had no interest in either of them, his thoughts grew even more excited. Hence, he sought out Luo He's disciple, Jingyu, hoping to get to know him better. If not, given Qin Ran's status, he would have disdained to be together with Jingyu. After all, among the disciples of Luo He, Jingyu's talent was extremely ordinary, and he wasn't valued highly by Luo He. Qin Ran's heart was blazing with fire, but Jingyu's heart was filled with worries. Right now, his alchemy cultivation had stagnated, and his master was extremely disappointed in him. He also understood the reason for this. It was all because of Mo Qingqing. He was deeply in love with Mo Qingqing, yet he could only gaze at her in secret. He didn't even dare to confess. And now, there were so many geniuses surrounding Mo Qingqing, all of them lusting after her. Some of them even wanted him to be their matchmaker, yet he couldn't voice out his bitterness. One could very well imagine how terrible Jingyu's mood was right now. These few days in Ginku, he had been drinking himself drunk every night. And yesterday, when he was drunk, he met his brother Jing Feng. Walking to the table, Jing Feng greeted him, to which he casually nodded his head. Jingyu, this is Luo Huan and Yang Xia. They both wish to enter the Pill Emperor Hall. Do you have any ideas? Jingyu's brother Jing Feng cast a glance at Jingyu, causing Jingyu to coldly laugh in his heart. This Jing Feng was truly a silk pants. Instead of focusing on his cultivation, he only knew how to flirt with flowers and grass. And now, he even wanted to use Jing Yu to help him play with women. How laughable. Jing Yu casually swept his gaze over, directly disregarding the female beside Yang Xia. This Yang Xia was actually quite pretty, and was currently casting flirtatious glances at him. Her clothes were revealing, and her figure was extremely alluring. Such a female, in Jing Yu's eyes, was too vulgar. Only Jing Feng would be interested in her. Because Jing Yu frequently sneaked glances at Mo Qingqing, how many people could enter his eyes now? However, when Jing Yu's gaze landed on Luo Huan, his eyes brightened. Luo Huan seemed to be born with an innate charm, giving off an intense sense of attraction. That sexy figure, coupled with her fiery figure, was undoubtedly the epitome of a woman. Although her clothes weren't as exquisite as Yang Xia's, when compared to Yang Xia's, Luo Huan caused a fire to ignite in the hearts of men. With such a beauty, wouldn't it be a joyous thing if I could spend a night with her? Jing Yu stared at the breathtaking countenance of Luo Huan, as a flame ignited in his heart. What sort of character was Chen Ran? Upon seeing the gazes of these people, he instantly understood the situation. He coldly laughed in his heart. He also knew that Jing Yu was secretly in love with Mo Qingqing. This was the reason why Jing Yu had such a frown on his face all the time. This woman is truly beautiful. If it wasn't for the fact that I met Mo Qingqing, I would be willing to accompany her to play. But since Jing Yu has taken a liking to her, I shall grant him his wish. Let him quickly forget about Mo Qingqing and come to help me. Chen Ran smiled. Brother Jing Yu is the disciple of Senior Luo He from the Pill Emperor Hall. Although it would take some effort to bring someone into the Pill Emperor Hall, it shouldn't be too difficult. However, why would he need to help someone he doesn't know? Jing Yu lightly sipped on his wine. Chen Ran's words were exactly what he wanted. I have some treasures on me, I'm willing to offer them all up. Yang Xia initially had some suspicions about Jing Feng's words, but after seeing the demeanor of Chen Ran and Jing Yu, her suspicions dissipated. This was an extremely good opportunity. Brother Jing Yu is a disciple of the Pill Emperor Hall. What use do I have for your treasures? Chen Ran glanced at Yang Xia. How could Yang Xia not understand Chen Ran's meaning? She cast a glance at Jing Yu. These people all exuded an extraordinary aura. If she could enter the Pill Emperor Hall, even if she chose to follow one of them, it wouldn't be a loss. As long as I can give it to you, there's no problem. Yang Xia shyly replied, lowering her head. Her intentions were extremely clear. However, at this moment, Chen Ran shifted his gaze onto Luo Huan. Evidently, his intentions weren't on Yang Xia. This scene caused the smile on Yang Xia's face to stiffen, becoming extremely ugly to behold. How could Luo Huan not understand the current situation? She couldn't help but feel depressed in her heart. Initially, she thought that Jing Feng would only find a swindler. She didn't expect that the other party was actually an extraordinary character. Just a single glance from Chen Ran gave her a huge sense of pressure. No matter what, these people were people from major powers, yet they were no different from commoners. Doing such despicable things outside, but Luo Huan had long since grown accustomed to it. Humans couldn't differentiate between the weak and the weak. These people all had high statuses, hence their sights were set higher. They weren't even interested in a sexy beauty like Yang Xia, but instead, they set their sights on her. I know that my talent is insufficient. I'm not qualified to enter the Pill Emperor Hall. Luo Huan replied with a smile. Although she felt disgust in her heart, she wouldn't fall out with them so easily. She, who was outside, was much more cautious compared to before. It's fine, as long as you are willing to put in some effort, I can guarantee that you will be able to join a transcendent power. Chen Ran lowered his voice. After all, this matter wasn't that glorious, and if his identity was exposed, it wouldn't be good for him. As for the hint he was hinting at, it was already extremely obvious that everyone could hear it. Qin Wenin had been paying attention to the situation over there. When he saw Jing Yu and Chen Ran appearing, he knew that it was impossible for his senior sister to tease them. And now that he heard Chen Ran's words, he couldn't help but to laugh coldly in his heart. My apologies, I have something to do. I'll take my leave first. Luo Huan stood up, her smile still on her face. Chen Ran's eyes narrowed, as a blazing light flickered within. Seeing Luo Huan turning around, he coldly stated, "It's best if you sit down." Luo Huan, sit down. Jing Feng also spoke, his countenance changing. This Chen Ran was obviously not someone easy to deal with. Not only that, Jing Yu already seemed to have some interest in Luo Huan. Luo Huan's countenance changed, only to see that in front of her, Qin Wenyan stood up, smiling at her. Luo Huan also smiled as she walked towards Qin Wenyan. "Why don't you try taking a step forward?" Jing Yu was originally in a bad mood, and Mo Qingqing could only secretly fall in love with him. But now, a girl with no background actually dared to throw a tantrum at him? This was akin to stabbing into his sore spot. "Sis, there's no need to care about that trash." Qin Wendian smiled as he walked towards Luo Huan. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, Luo Huan's smile grew even sweeter. Back in Chu, she already knew that Qin Wentian's actions were extremely cautious. Since he dared to speak in such a manner, it was evident that he wasn't afraid of Jing Yu at all. Not only that, she also noticed that other than Qin Wendian and Fan Lu, there was also Ouyang Guangxing, Jiang Ting and the rest. Chapter 338. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, a terrifying light flickered in Jing Yu's eyes. Trash. Recently, he had been incomparably dispirited. He would often ask himself if his so-called talent had already been lost. Not only did his master doubt him, even his fellow apprentices doubted him. These two words were like a needle piercing into his heart. "Slut, scram over here and sit down. If not, I will turn you into my plaything." Jing Yu didn't turn around, but instead coldly spoke. With his back facing Qin Wenyan, his handsome countenance contorted. If it was any other time, Jing Yu wouldn't have lost his composure like this. It was just that his mood had been too bad recently, and coupled with the provocation from Qin Wenyan, the dark side of his heart had been exposed. When the people in the inn heard this, they all turned their gazes towards Jing Yu, as expressions of interest appeared on their faces. This person seemed to have a certain temperament, but to say such words, it was truly beneath his status. Luo Huan's countenance stiffened, as a cold glint of light flickered in her eyes. Although she had been living a lowly and cautious life these few years, she still maintained her dignity, not allowing herself to be humiliated by others. If Luo He knew that she had to hand over a disciple like you, I wonder how she would feel. A cold intent gushed forth from Qin Wenyan. Jing Yu placed his wine cup down and turned around. After which, when he saw Qin Wentian's countenance, his countenance abruptly froze. He wasn't very familiar with Qin Wendian, and had only met him twice. The first time, he and his fellow disciple Yan Qi stared at Qin Wendian, telling him not to dream of being together with Mo Qingqing. He was merely a jackdaw, and wasn't worthy of her. The second time was outside the Pill Emperor Hall. He found it laughable that Qin Wendian had actually managed to find his way here. But after that, he saw Qin Wendian facing off against Zhan Chen. After that, the rumors regarding Qin Wendian continued to circulate unceasingly. The youngest fourth-ranked grandmaster in the Moon Continent had killed Hua Xiaoyun in a fit of rage for the sake of his lover. In that violent battle, all of his puppets had been destroyed, and he had suffered heavy injuries. But even so, he still managed to hold Xu Ruanyu hostage and escape unscathed. In that battle, 3 assassins had fallen, and Zhan Chen's reputation had been questioned. There were even people who suspected that the assassin was really Zhan Chen, and that he had killed his lover before. This was the third time that Qin Wenyan stood there, looking at him with a gaze as though he was looking at a lowly ant. This was the gaze he used to look at Qin Wenyan in the past. Such a gaze caused his heart to ache even more. "It's you." Jing Yu's gaze was ice-cold, yet he only saw Qin Wendian coldly glancing at him. The sharpness of Qin Wentian's gaze seemed to penetrate right into his mind. Momentarily, a terrifying pressure bore down on him, causing him to feel terror. It was as though a terrifying primordial demon had appeared in front of him, wanting to tear him apart. Boom! Qin Wenyan took a step forwards, causing Jing Yu's heart to pound wildly. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat as he tried to move backwards. With a loud thud, the stool he was sitting on directly toppled over, and he himself also fell beneath the table. "If you dare to spout any more vulgar words, I will make you scram out of here," Qin Wendian icily stated. Jing Yu, who had just climbed back up, had a pale countenance. Staring at the numerous gazes directed at him, Jing Yu felt a lump in his chest, causing him to feel extremely unbearable. Pill Emperor Hall's Luo, he actually has such a disciple? It's rumored that the youngest disciple of Luo He, Mo Qingqing, has a heart of agility and is as beautiful as a fairy from the heavens. Yet this young man is actually her senior brother? Unbelievable. Many in the crowd shook their heads and sighed. Qin Wenyan didn't bother with these voices. He walked towards Luo Huan, and as he stared at this sexy and beautiful senior apprentice sister of his, he stretched out his hands and gently caressed her face. "Sis, you've lost weight. Smelly brat, how dare you take advantage of your senior sister?" Luo Huan had a warm smile on her face. This fellow had truly grown up. Now, he could already protect her. He was no longer the young man who needed her protection in the past. "Who asked senior sister to be so beautiful? It would be a waste if I didn't take advantage of you." Qin Wendian laughed. After which, he gave Luo Huan a tight hug. It had nothing to do with the feelings between a man and a woman, it was pure familial love. He had long since treated Luo Huan like Qin Yao, as his own elder sister. "Oi, your sister can't breathe." Luo Huan couldn't help but to be speechless when she felt Qin Wentian's immense strength. The two of them separated, and Fatty Fan Lu walked over. He extended his arms towards Luo Huan as he greeted, "Senior sister." "Damn, Fatty, your figure is even better than before." Luo Huan giggled as she looked at Fatty. Momentarily, Fatty pulled a long face as he stated, "Senior sister, you can't be so biased. When you have a figure like Wentian's, maybe I will give you a chance." Luo Huan giggled, causing Fatty to instantly feel despair. "Sis, let's go over and sit." Qin Wenyan pulled Luo Huan along and prepared to leave, only to hear Chen Ran, who had been silent all this while, suddenly speaking, "Wait a minute." Chen Ran had been observing everything from the side. Qin Wendian and his group all exuded an extraordinary aura. This was especially so for Ouyang Guangxing and Jiang Ting. All of them should be from major powers. As for Qin Wenyan, he seemed to have the aura of a boorish person, letting his emotions affect his decisions. However, his strength shouldn't be weak at all. However, no matter who they were, in Ginkgo, in front of his Chun clan, even if they were a dragon, they would still have to kneel. This moment was undoubtedly the best opportunity to make Jing Yu feel gratitude towards him. "No matter who you are, come over here and apologize in front of my brother Jing Yu." Chen Ran slammed his palms on the table, his voice filled with a hint of coldness. At the side, Yang Xia and the rest had always thought that Jing Yu's identity as a disciple of the Pill Emperor Hall would be useful. But now, she could tell that Chen Ran's identity was even more shocking compared to Jing Yu. If not, after Jing Yu was humiliated by Qin Wendian, he wouldn't have dared to stand out. Only now did Qin Wendian turn his gaze to Chen Ran. Earlier he had seen Chen Ran's impoliteness, but this place was after all Ginkgo, and he didn't want to stir up trouble. Hence, he decided to let go of the matter of teaching Jing Yu a lesson, but who would have thought that Chen Ran wouldn't let him off so easily? "Sis, let's go." Qin Wendian merely glanced at Chen Ran before pulling Luo Huan to his table, completely ignoring Chen Ran's words. Chen Ran continued slamming his palms on the table, his countenance akin to a blazing sun, causing the surrounding air to heat up. Those who cultivated the Great Solar Universe art were all core members of the Chen clan. From the look in Chen Ran's eyes, one could tell that he had cultivated the Great Solar Universe art before. If he didn't have enough confidence, he wouldn't have pursued a character like Mo Qingqing. The great solar flame in Chen Ran's eyes was clearly seen by Ouyang Guangxing. When Chen Ran was speaking, Ouyang Guangxing had already noticed him. When they arrived at the table, Ouyang Guangxing stated, "He's from the great solar Chen clan of Ginkgo." Chen clan? Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. With regards to the transcendent powers of the Grand Xia Empire, He already had a rough understanding of them. On the way to Gingku, Ouyang Quangxing had already introduced them to him. The Great Solar Qin clan was an extremely ancient aristocrat clan that had existed since the era of ancient Grand Xia. Not only that, they were one of the 9 grand clans, one of the 9 most powerful clans under the ancient Grand Xia Empire. They cultivated the tyrannical Great Solar Universe art. Upon hearing the name of the Great Solar Qin clan, the first thing that came to Qin Wentian's mind was the scene he saw in the Heavenly Steel. Those 9 people plotted to conquer the world, splitting the divine steel into 9 parts, allowing each of them to wield one of the 9 ultimate arts. The Great Solar Qin clan was probably the descendant of one of those 9 people. Even now, they had already become a terrifying existence. Chen Ran's eyes flickered as he stared at Ouyang Quangxing. Ouyang Quangxing was able to tell with a single glance that he was from the Great Solar Qin clan. "Who might you be?" Chen Ran indifferently asked. "Ouyang aristocrat clan, Ouyang Quangxing." Ouyang Quangxing didn't bother to conceal his identity and directly stated. His words caused the people in the inn to sigh in amazement. Today, the drunken immortal residence was bustling with activity. The Great Solar Qin clan, Ouyang aristocrat clan and Pill Emperor Hall actually appeared here at the same time. However, such a matter was something that the crowd loved to see. It would be best if they could have a proper clash and see which clan was stronger. Ouyang Quangxing. Chen Ran's eyes flickered. He had naturally heard of this name before. Ouyang Quangxing from the Ouyang aristocrat clan was one of the top names of the transcendent powers. What about him? Chen Ran turned his gaze onto Qin Wenyin. "He's my brother, Qin Wenyin. Today, I'm here with my fiancée Jiang Ting and a few other brothers. I hope you won't disturb our mood." Ouyang Quangxing indifferently replied. Chen Ran's lips curled up in a cold smile. "But my mood has already been disturbed. Not only that, he suddenly launched a sneak attack against my friend. I'm only asking him to apologize, isn't that too much?" Ouyang Quangxing understood that Chen Ran didn't want to give him any face. Since this was the case, there was no need for him to say anything else. He turned his gaze away, completely disregarding Chen Ran. Chen Ran placed his palms on the table. Instantly, a terrifying heat gushed forth, incinerating the entire table into nothingness. Not only that, even the wine cups on the table were melted into liquid, incinerated by the terrifying heat. The people seated at the table hurriedly retreated. The great solar radiance in Chen Ran's eyes grew even more terrifying as a terrifying intent emanated from him. If I take the initiative to attack, not only would I have to apologize, I would also want that woman. Chen Ran's voice contained traces of coldness. He was a member of the Great Solar Qin clan. Why would he need to give face to Ouyang Quangxing? Not only that, he wouldn't take the initiative to offend Ouyang Quangxing. Since Qin Wenyin and that woman weren't from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, he could make a move against them. "Elder sis, wait a moment." Qin Wenyin stared at the stiffened expression on Luo Huan's face. After which, he put down his wine cup and stood up, walking towards Chen Ran. Instantly, a terrifying aura gushed forth from him. His countenance turned incomparably demonic, and his eyes caused the hearts of those who looked at him to tremble. "You have some strength, but a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu is still insufficient." Chen Ran slowly stood up. The people in the surroundings hurriedly evaded him, and all the tables and chairs that got too close to him were instantly incinerated into ashes. The Great Solar Universe art allowed those who cultivated it to possess the Great Solar Universe energy, capable of incinerating the heavens and boiling the seas. When the Great Solar Universe art was unleashed, anyone who got too close to it would die. Although Chen Ran didn't have that kind of power, those who got too close to him would still feel their hearts trembling. As for the aura he exuded, it was at the 8th level of Yuanfu. Boom! Chen Ran took a step forward, leaving a deep footprint beneath his feet. His palms also turned red as a terrifying heat gushed forth, gushing towards Qin Wenyin. "On account of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, I'll give you one last chance." Chen Ran's eyes flickered with a terrifying great solar radiance, akin to the sun itself. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.